Wishes to start the session, please. Thank you very much. Please sit down.
Dear colleague, we have to start our afternoon session. Now we come to another site, Mount Amigutan Range Wildlife Sanctuary, Philippines. The draft decision 37.8b.12. Now I invite IUCN to present the nomination of Mount Amigutan Range Wildlife Sanctuary, Philippines. IUCN, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. IUCN's evaluation of the Mount Hamiguitan Range Wildlife Sanctuary site is on page 53 of both the English and French versions of the IUCN evaluation report. The Mount Hamiguitan Range is located in the southernmost part of the Philippines on the island of Mindanao. The range forms a north-south running mountain ridge in the southeastern part of the eastern Mindanao Biodiversity Corridor. The property is nominated totals approximately 7,133 hectares, comprising a core area of 6,349 hectares and a narrow buffer zone of 784 hectares. The State Party advised in supplementary information of their intention to extend both the core area of the nomination and the buffer zone to encompass a total area of 23,842 hectares. The nominated property is characterised by 5 vegetation types: agro-ecosystems at lower elevations, dipterocarp forests, montane forests and mossy forests on higher elevations, and mossy pygmy forest on the highest windswept mountaintops. It is the only protected forest noted for having a large and unique area of pygmy forest with century-old trees thriving in the area's distinctive ultramafic soils. The variety of habitats contained within the property, combined with the undulating landscape, yield globally unique species of flora and fauna. The property displays high levels of endemism in a very concentrated area and protects a significant proportion of the globally unique biodiversity of remaining lowland and mountain forests on the island of Mindanao. The property is home to 957 species of flora, including 171 endemics, 3 of which are site endemic. It is also home to 423 species of fauna, with 124 endemics, 5 of which are found only in the sanctuary. The site has developed in semi-isolation, with species adapted to the unique soil conditions and elevations to create a series of discrete terrestrial habitats. The property is home to a number of critically endangered, threatened and vulnerable species. Mount Hamiguitan Range Wildlife Sanctuary supports a high percentage of the species found within the Philippines biodiversity hotspot. Less than 0.1% of this hotspot is represented on the World Heritage List. Furthermore, the terrestrial and freshwater global 200 priority ecoregions and endemic bird area, which are represented by the property, have all been identified as gaps on the World Heritage List. IUCN nevertheless notes the fragmented nature of remaining lowland and mountain forests on Mindanao makes it difficult to capture the full range of biodiversity values in a single site. Hence, the Philippine tentative list, which identifies several other forest sites with potential OUV. IUCN welcomes the advice of the State Party that additional areas may be added to the nomination, including adjacent habitats, notably of the known nesting habitat of the Philippine eagle. The nominated property is state-owned and managed by a number of government agencies. The property is well protected through a strict access control regime within the core zone and through the requirement of all visitors to be accompanied. The laws control development within the boundaries of the property and are consistent in their objectives to protect the key values of the property. A 2012 management plan and an ecotourism business plan cover the property and deal with a range of issues that are critical to the integrity of the property. It's an umbrella plan within which detailed management actions should be designed and implemented. more detailed and comprehensive eco-tourism and business planning has not yet been undertaken for the property. Impressive levels of local community and NGO involvement are evident, most notably in the municipality of San Isidro. Local NGOs such as the Philippine Eagle Foundation are doing quality research work in cooperation with other academic institutions and the government agencies. Advice from the State Party confirmed reports of 30,000 hectares of overlapping land claims with the nominated area buffer zone and proposed extensions by Indigenous peoples. The State Party advised of their commitment to resolving the claims through the National Commission for Indigenous Peoples. And IUCN considered that the resolution of such claims is central to ensuring there is a common understanding among all stakeholders to ensure the protection and conservation of the property. In summary, IUCN notes the potential for this site to meet Criterion 10, however, recommends the committee defer the examination of the nomination of Mount Hamiguitan Range Wildlife Sanctuary to the World Heritage List to address boundary and the resolution of rights issues, in particular overlapping land claims. Deferral, we believe, will allow an evaluation of areas proposed for addition to the property, as well as the significantly reconfigured boundaries that would result. And the decision for this is on page 11 of the English and page 12 of the French versions of Working Document 8B. Thank you, Chair.
I open to the comment of the committee member, please. I give the floor to Malaysia.
Thank you, Chair. Malaysia noted with interest IUCN assessment of the rich and diverse biodiversity heritage in the proposed site, which represent not only the gap in World Heritage Site, especially the tropical rainforest, but also within the Malaysian region. As noted by IUCN assessment, there is already a strict protection regime in place, and also there is already a management plan in place. However, Malaysia has been made to understand that all the concern as expressed in the recommendation has already been taken care of by the State Party. Malaysia has proposed some amendments which may be put on the board in a few minutes' time. So, in essence, Malaysia would like to propose something a little bit more drastic, as I suppose, from being deferred to being inscribed. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Malaysia is proposing to change from deferral to inscription. Yes. And now I invite Japan to take the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I believe one of the major issues is how to protect flora, especially a rare and unique species, that is a Philippine eagle. So I'd like to put a question to the State Party for clarification. My question is, how does the State Party intend to expand the core zone to include the nesting habitat of the Philippine eagle? And I also ask about the buffer zone. Thank you.
Call on Thailand, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thailand is go along with Malaysia and Japan, and Thailand wish to request the committee to recall the recent successful achievement of the Philippines to delist its rice terrain out of the heritage in danger. I'm sure that the State Party will substantially address the concern raised by the IUCN evaluation report, and we wish to hear from the state party. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I call on Qatar, please.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. لقد استمعنا إلى تقرير إيجابي من ال IUCN، ولكن المقترح الوارد بالنسبة للدفيرل ربما كان شديدا نوعا ما مقارنة بالتقرير الإيجابي. وكما فهمنا أيضا بأن الدولة العضو قد قامت بتقديم تقريرها، تقرير حول الموقع في تاريخ متأخر، وطبعا بحسب القوانين المعمول بها لم يؤخذ بهذا التقرير. فإذا تمت إحالة الأمر كدفيرل فنعتقد بأن يعني التقرير الذي ورد على كل حال يلبي كثير من المتطلبات، ربما يؤخذ هذا بعين الاعتبار. فبالتالي إذا تمت إحالة الموضوع إلى سنوات لاحقة فماذا ستفعل الدولة العضو خلال هذه السنوات وهي قد قامت فعليا بمحاولة تلبية المطلوب منها؟ لذلك نؤيد ما ذهبت إليه ماليزيا، وشكرا.
I call on Siabi, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We would like to acknowledge that the State Party finalized a memorandum of agreement with 3 tribal groups, and also provincial governments, which was recommended before, so that could really contribute to land use plans and management in the future. Also, State Party proposed a buffer zone, and since it will be significant enlargement of the property, it would be good to hear about the State Party statement related to management and particularly related to nesting place for eagle, critical habitat. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to India, please.
Thank you, Chair. I speak specifically on the issue of the rights of local people, a subject that has been raised in the evaluation and finds a place in the draft decision. Now, my understanding is that this issue has been addressed more than adequately, that the local communities, local people have actually entered into an agreement with the government. Secondly, that there is a due process of law, of Filipino law, that is in place to address such issues. So I'd like the State Party to confirm that both actions have taken place, and that if they have, this is no longer an issue that we need to be concerned with at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Lamali, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, suite à l'exposé de l'UNCN, nous sommes en face d'un site exceptionnel. Il s'agit d'une forêt protégée avec plus de 957 espèces, mais nous sommes surtout en présence d'une forêt qui a une forte concentration et de réserves en eau. Et suivant l'exposé de l'UNCN, on se rend également compte des efforts faits par l'État partie en vue de la protection et de la gestion de cette forêt. Il s'agit essentiellement d'un cadre juridique institutionnel qui est élaboré, qui est là et qui fonctionne. Il s'agit également du plan de gestion qui est un outil pratique de gestion de la forêt, mais surtout de la participation de la communauté locale, parce que ce patrimoine d'abord appartient à cette communauté locale. Et nous pensons que nous partageons l'avis de la Malaisie et nous saluons surtout la disponibilité de l'UNCN à accompagner l'État partie, parce qu'il s'agit en fait d'apporter un certain nombre de modifications mineures, c'est-à-dire des mesures d'accompagnement dans l'organe consultatif également serait prête à faire. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Je donne la parole à l'Algérie.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. L'Algérie a la même impression que le Qatar sur le caractère positif du rapport UICN, qui, à notre sens, tend vers l'idée d'une inscription, et peut-être que l'État partie pourrait peut-être apporter quelques informations dans ce sens. Merci.
La parole à la Suisse.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous voulons aussi féliciter l'État partie pour avoir finalisé le mémorandum d'entente avec les parties prenantes. Les communautés locales sont très importantes dans ce cas. Par contre, nous sommes dans un cas, encore une fois, où le périmètre proposé par l'État ne permet pas de protéger la valeur universelle exceptionnelle. Nous avons donc une question, avant de discuter du drafting à l'État partie. Où est-ce que ça en est? Est-ce que ces importants habitats de nidification des espèces en danger ont été ajoutés, quand ils vont l'être, et qu'est-ce que ça en est du périmètre du site? Merci.
I call on Iraq, please.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس. بلا شك أننا أزاء موقع متميز من حيث التنوع النباتي والحيواني، محمي قانونيا مع وجود خطة إدارة رصينة، إضافة إلى اللجنة التي ورد ذكرها، اللجنة الوطنية المعنية بحل النزاع مع السكان الأصليين. عليه نطلب أن يعطى المزيد من الوقت للدولة الطرف لتوضيحات أكثر. شكرا جزيلا.
I call on United Arab Emirates, please.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. ونحن نتابع تقرير الجهات الاستشارية عن هذا الموقع. استمعنا إلى معلومات على درجة كبيرة من الأهمية لما يمثل هذا الموقع من التنوع البيولوجي ومن الجهود في تعاون الدولة الطرف مع الجهات الاستشارية في هذا الصدد، ووجود خطط وانخراط المجتمع المحلي أيضا في هذا الشأن. بعدما سمعناه عن ما يمثل هذا الموقع، نحن نعتقد أن أي شواغل ظلت مطروحة نثق في أن الدولة الطرف يمكن استيفاء هذه النواقص دون أن تقف عقبة على إدراج هذا الموقع. لذلك ومن أجل هذه القيمة العالية لهذا الموقع، نحن نضم صوتنا إلى الدول التي سبقتنا بتأييد اقتراح ماليزيا بالإدراج. شكرا.
Several committee members wish to hear more comment from the state party. So, Philippines, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We propose to answer the relevant questions presented by the IUCN in their assessment of their property as follows. Regarding the land claims, the state party attests that these are still being evaluated by the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples on whether these have merit or not. In the meantime, the provincial government has entered into a memorandum of agreement with the 3 indigenous peoples groups who are the land claim applicants to ensure their commitment in conserving the property. This means that these applicants, together with the local communities as well as all government agencies concerned, commit to the conservation of the property and fully support its possible inscription to the World Heritage List. The presence of the provincial governor of Davao Oriental and the provincial head of the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples to this committee session affirms their steadfast dedication to the nomination of the property. We are also pleased to report that a memorandum of agreement was signed by the provincial government, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, and the Philippine Eagle Foundation, legalizing the Biodiversity Partnerships Project. This project addresses the fragmentation of the Mount Hamiguitan Range by declaring the 7,000 hectares of the Philippine eagle nesting habitat as a wildlife sanctuary, which now forms part of the core zone of the nominated property and designated an additional 9,000 hectares of buffer zone. All efforts were directed to gathering information and formulating policies that were pointed out in the IUCN report received last May. It is with pride that we report that we have substantially addressed all concerns owing to the overwhelming support of all stakeholders. IUCN recognizes the property as part of a biodiversity gap in the World Heritage List. Considering the site's high levels of endemic flora and fauna, the Philippines wishes to appeal for inscription of the site to the World Heritage List. We wish to thank the committee members for their support, IUCN for the recommendations, and Cambodia for hosting the 37th World Heritage Committee session. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
So I call on Germany, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have listened to the state party and having listened also to IUCN's evaluation, we understand that this is a site which is important for biodiversity conservation, and we believe that at one point it makes a good case for criterion 10. However, as IUCN stated in its evaluation, to be of OUV, the nominated site needs additional habitats to be added to ensure integrity. And having heard the state party, we commend them for the effort and its intention to add this critical Philippine eagle nesting habitat as a wildlife sanctuary to the site, and also for its intention to enlarge the buffer zone, both aspects which have been asked for by IUCN. And this will double the surface of the nominated territory. But this is all very positive, but what we are seeing now in front of us is very different from what has been originally nominated. It has a double over surface. Sorry. It's the double of the surface, and I'm sure that this needs some very careful evaluation before coming for inscription. And as we have also heard, the state party said land claims are still being evaluated at the moment. This is very positive that evaluation takes place, but in my view, that issue is not completely resolved. For us, these two issues present some critical issues to be resolved before the property is inscribed. So we would think that makes a strong case for a referral, and I would like to seek IUCN's view on that proposal for adding buffer zone and habitat, because they've been there on mission, and I'm sure they can comment on this at this stage, I hope.
IUCN, if you can have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to clarify. I think the first point IUCN wishes to make is that we welcome the rapid actions that have been taken by the State Party on a number of the recommendations that were made, and we have been in close dialogue with the State Party on this property and the changes that are proposed. The rationale for the decision of deferral was based on the opportunity, the proposal to create new wildlife sanctuaries and an expanded buffer zone, as well as the potentially significant issues around overlapping land right claims. The supplementary information that was provided by the State Party indicated its intention to add significantly to the core area with the addition of this extra reserve. and also to expand the buffer zone. The evidence of the resolution of land claims was not available before the 28th of February. And IUCN's view on deferral is that it will provide the opportunity for a further field mission to evaluate properly what is a doubling of the core area and a 12-fold increase in the buffer zone of the property. Thank you.
So I done rapport.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Des efforts incontestables ont été accomplis, mais nous pensons qu'il faut encore donner un peu de temps au temps afin d'apporter les corrections supplémentaires nécessaires. Et donc, en ce sens, nous soutenons ce qui vient d'être dit par les délégations de l'Allemagne et de la Suisse. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Any no more. So I call on rapporteur to present the text.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to have, as it's been said, Malaysia submitted a new draft decision with the intention to inscribe this site of Hamilton Range Wildlife Sanctuary, Philippines, into the World Heritage List. So it has a lot of changes. I'm going to read very slowly. First paragraph, there have been no changes. Second paragraph, inscribes the Mount Hamilton Range Wildlife Sanctuary, Philippines, to the World Heritage List on the basis of Criterion 10. Then Malaysia proposed deletion of little a, little b, little c, little d, which you have in original draft decision, little e, little f. Then I have to state that we haven't received yet this statement of outstanding universal value, which we have to have when we adopt decision. It's just arrived, by email in English from Malaysia. So we are going to put it, let us go to number 3, please, because it's a complete new paragraph. You will need the time to read it. Okay, it's okay. So I will read until considers that the state party has adequately addressed the issues pertaining to the integrity of the site through the enactment of the Memorandum of Agreement with indigenous peoples groups applying for land claims and the Memorandum of Agreement putting into effect the Biodiversity Partnership Project, which designates the Philippine eagle nesting habitat as a wildlife sanctuary part of the nominated properties core zone and provided for its expanded buffer zone. I just want to turn your attention to the fact that that proposal took some of the wording that was previously deleted. So actually some of the parts of deleted paragraphs you can find in following what I'm reading now. Then we have a number 4. Encourages the state party to formulate a detailed visitor and tourism management plan as a sub-plan to the management plan in recognition of the potential for increasing pressure for access and higher numbers of park visitors. And number B, develop and implement a research and monitoring program to assess and adapt to the impact of climate change on the property. Thank you. I think, Mr. Chair, the time we insert the outstanding universal value, maybe you can ask if the state parties have some comments on what was proposed. Thank you.
I call on IUCN to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I think it just might be helpful to make a comment on paragraph 3 in the proposed amendment, and it may be helpful to the committee to also perhaps hear from the Secretariat in relation to the nature of a nomination. I just would like to point out in the way that this is worded that it implies that the newly designated area of the Philippine eagle nesting habitat would be part of the nominated property's core zone, and that there would be an expanded buffer zone provided. And I'm not sure that the Secretariat can confirm in terms of the sort of statutory position on that, but I think as things stand, those areas, there's not a possibility that those areas can be considered at this session part of the nomination. They need to be introduced into documents that are before the committee. What is before the committee at the moment is the nomination, is the supplementary information that was submitted by the 28th of February, which is the statutory deadline for such information to be provided to the committee, and that's the information that we are able to evaluate and present to the committee at this session. And anything that comes since then, without taking away from what I think is an enormous amount of effort and achievement that has been delivered in the Philippines to respond to the points, I think doesn't exist in the nomination at this point in time. So perhaps the Secretariat might comment, but as I read 3, it's describing things as being in the nomination that, as I would understand it, are not currently physically inside the nomination, and nor in terms of buffer zone are they recognised within the nomination. And the nomination as it stands is the Mount Hamaguita National Park on its original boundary as per the IUCN evaluation report and as per the nomination. But it may be, Chair, although it's at your discretion, that the Secretariat itself might wish to just comment on the statutory process issue here in terms of the nomination, the maps, etc. Thank you.
Yeah, Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We confirm that actually by procedure of the operational guidelines in terms of nomination, it is not possible to proceed adding parts that were not introduced in the nomination on the original document, either in additional information received by 28th of February. So it is not possible to introduce parts either as part of the nominated property or as additional or expanded buffer zone right at the moment of the committee meeting without proper evaluation. Thank you, Chair.
Call on Germany, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for IUCN and the Secretariat to qualify this issue, which is not only content but also procedural, as I understood correctly from the Centre's intervention. As a committee member, we value the efforts made by the State Party, and we sincerely believe that this is a site which has a very good potential to get on the list, but at the appropriate moment, right within the procedures of what this convention is working in. So, having heard all this and not reiterating what I've been saying before, I feel that makes a very good case for a referral we can acknowledge, we can adapt the draft decision, the old draft decision, in terms of that, seeing what has been done or refining the text so that it well reflects the progress which has been made. But we would certainly have a big difficulty and would oppose to inscription, mainly also for procedural matters, but also in terms of content, because this big boundary addition has to be properly evaluated. The same is true for MOUs and land claim plans or understandings which have been reached. And I think we should give the property and us the time to review this on a proper basis, have the time, come back with that property next year, and be ready to say, yes, this is a wonderful site to be inscribed then. And I feel this is the right procedure to follow, and I hope that other fellow committee members can follow us on this position. Thanks.
Sénégal, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. J'avoue que j'étais sur le point d'appuyer la proposition d'inscription qui a été introduite. Mais ce mail ou ce SMS a tout changé. Il a tout changé parce qu'il nous montre clairement qu'il y a un effet rédhibitoire à l'inscription. Nous avons tous eu à faire des dossiers d'inscription. Le monsieur là-bas qui a les lunettes rondes nous a souvent fait souffrir avec les cartes et les délimitations. Ça a souvent été un élément rédhibitoire à l'inscription. Et je ne trahis aucun secret. On en a encore beaucoup parlé sur les orientations depuis une semaine. Je pense que s'il n'y avait pas eu ce mail affiché, j'aurais cédé. Mais avec ce mail, je pense qu'on n'a pas le droit d'inscrire un bien dont les limites n'ont pas été étudiées et déterminées. Merci.
On Estonia, please.
Thank you for the floor. Yes, having heard the explanations from IUCN, we also think that referral would be a good solution for the situation now. Thank you.
Je donne la parole à la France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La France tient encore une fois à saluer les efforts de l'État partie et remercie le secrétariat et l'UICN pour leur contribution. Si toutes les conditions ne sont pas encore réunies à ce stade, en revanche, un renvoi, comme cela vient d'être souligné, permettrait de finaliser les éléments nécessaires pour une inscription dans de bonnes conditions. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Je donne la parole à la Suisse.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Comme nos collègues ont dit, nous ne pouvons pas décider aujourd'hui d'une inscription. Nous n'avons même pas quel périmètre ce site a. Donc, je pense vraiment que c'est impossible aussi au niveau procédurier, mais aussi au niveau logique, de procéder aujourd'hui à une inscription de ce site. Donc, ça serait plutôt un différé, comme on avait dit au début, parce qu'il y a encore beaucoup de travail à faire. On a vu que l'État partie a une énorme volonté, a déjà commencé les travaux pour améliorer le dossier. Donc il y a une amélioration nécessaire. L'État partie le reconnaît, mais ses engagements sont très forts. Mais en tout cas, à l'état actuel, on ne peut pas juger de l'inscription de ce site. Merci.
Merci. I call on India.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to clarify things for myself. The issue of the local people. As I understand it, there was a visit by the IUCN team. There have been discussions with the local people, and the IUCN advised that in some way there could be an agreement or a memorandum of understanding, if I understand the position. The state party, the Philippines, has acted very promptly. At one level, it has a law to deal with this. The state has a law, the state has a process. This process was in place, IUCN or no IUCN, irrespective of the nature of the problem that the local people have, if they have one. As I understand it, the local people actually filed some claims even after, and that's a process that's going to happen. The minute you open out and encourage people to come forward with, and they see the possibility of some advantage, they will do it. So in this case, the state party has responded very promptly and forged an agreement with the communities. That's actually over and above the process of law. But even without that, there is a process by which the claim, or any claim made by any person in this area, would have been resolved through a semi or quasi-judicial process. If my understanding is correct, then irrespective of the fact that this information came before 28th February or after 28th February, and in this case it came later, I'm not sure that this is an issue that you can exclude from the consideration of the committee. So I'd just like to, obtain a better understanding of this.
So we come back to Malaysia. You have the floor, please.
After hearing comments from all sides, we commend very seriously the State Party for all the efforts and work taken after the visit of IUCN and the recommendation being made. Due to technical matters, specifically on the procedure matters, we feel it is our duty now to withdraw our amendment from being inscribed to referral as proposed by Germany and France. Thank you, Chair.
You have the floor. Colombia, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. En primer lugar, quisiéramos felicitar al Estado filipino por las explicaciones tan contundentes que ha hecho, por el esfuerzo demostrado frente a este importante sitio y quisiéramos sumarnos a la propuesta de Alemania, Estonia, Francia, Malasia, Senegal, de darle la oportunidad de complementar y definir algunos aspectos menores que están todavía en consideración. Gracias.
Larcy, you have the floor.
Спасибо, уважаемый господин председатель. Уважаемые коллеги, у нас прошла такая обстоятельная дискуссия, и, конечно, этот объект, он заполняет тот пробел в списке всемирного наследия, как правильно было подчеркнуто, МСОП в части, извините, пожалуйста, биоразнообразия. Мы выслушали очень внимательно все то, что сделала страна за это время. Мы понимаем, что процедурно страна немножко позже дала все эти очень важные, выполнила все эти важные рекомендации, которые были даны ранее. В частности, подписала меморандум с местным населением и с Министерством природопользования. В частности, расширила буферную зону и так далее. Тем не менее, у МСОП в соответствии с регламентом не было возможности убедиться, что это так. Поэтому я предлагаю, что все-таки deferral – это почти что новая номинация. Это опять очень большая работа, и бумажная работа. Поэтому я бы предложила, чтобы это был referral. Тогда миссия МСОП могла бы приехать в страну или посмотреть для начала документы дополнительные и убедиться, что все сделано. Или будет время еще доработать и представить на следующий год. Спасибо большое.
Merci. Qatar, you have the floor.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. بعد استماعنا للنقاش البناء نعتقد بأن اقتراح ريفيرال اقتراح مناسب مع اقتناعنا بأن هذا الموقع الآن يلبي الكثير من الشروط، ولكن إرجاؤه للعام القادم يعطي الدولة الطرف الوقت أيضا لاستكمال ما يتوجب استكماله. فنحن نساعد المقترح الألماني والماليزي وجميع الدول التي نتحدث. وشكرا.
Thank you. I call on IUCN again.
Thanks, Chair. In fact, I suggested to respond to the question that was raised earlier by India, and I see their plate is up, so perhaps it may be better to... I'm quite happy to respond, but perhaps it's better to hear again from India and then respond to the point. The point I would like to clarify, if necessary, is the two different aspects of this. One is the indigenous land claim, which India was referring to, but the other is the question of boundaries, which a number of delegations, and I think the Russian Federation actually summarised most clearly in their two different issues. But perhaps I'll just pause and see what further clarification is needed, Chair.
Call on India, please.
Thank you, Chair. IUCN is quite right. The question is less urgently, immediately relevant. But there is a question that I'd like to put to IUCN through you, if you permit an answer. That with the same process of accommodation, urgency, dialogue that IUCN has shown, and we as India are witness to that, would they be able to reach out to the Philippines and accommodate and do this very quickly, which is to assess the impact and the potential of the site, both on the indigenous peoples, which is a smaller issue, which is a lesser issue, and on the question of the boundaries of the site. It's a question that I'd like to put to the IUCN, and I hope that there is a positive answer so that the Philippines is reassured that they would be able to come back next year with an improved and perhaps more complete nomination. Thank you, Chair.
IUCN, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just to respond to the point which I can respond to in terms of the two different issues. So, as far as the question of the revised boundaries is concerned, the mission saw the terrain, including the areas that I think are now proposed for both inclusion as new areas that would be added in a revised boundary of the property, and also the new buffer zone. So, on that aspect, we would not see the need for a new mission, and we've had a good opportunity for dialogue with the Philippines since the decisions were published, and I met the ambassador in Paris, and we've continued a discussion since then, and also here at the committee. The reason we'd preferred through the World Heritage Panel of IUCN the deferral option was that with the indigenous land claim, which was a clear legal aspect that had not been noted in the nomination and was identified quite late in the process, that appears to us to be an issue where it is quite helpful to be in the country and meet the people. But the development of the legal instrument on that has proceeded rapidly. We would still want the opportunity to speak directly to all of the organisations concerned, but they are present here at the committee. And certainly if the question is, can we engage with the Philippines? I think we already are, and we'll be delighted to continue to do so. But I don't see an obstacle to understanding the values within the area that are proposed for inclusion in the property, nor the function of the buffer zone in a referral, if that's the contention of the committee, because those areas were visited during the mission, so we have an up-to-date understanding from the field on those matters. Thank you, Chair.
I'll call on the rapporteur, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we were following very attentively all the discussions in the room, and it seems to us that referral is the consensual option. So we put back in the paragraph number 2 what was proposed at the beginning, but instead of deferral we put referral. So I can read, refers the nomination of Mount Hamilton Range Wildlife Sanctuary, Philippines, taking note of the potential to the World Heritage List. No, we don't need to the World Heritage List. Okay, just taking note of the potential for this site to meet criteria 10 in order to allow the state party to. Now I would like to have your attention to explain that in the deletion of the paragraphs that we had, I noticed that just in number F we, okay, point of order.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, and excuse me, the rapporteur. I think in terms of how are we going to deal with it, I think it might be more useful to go back to the original text, the original draft decision on the deferral, and then see paragraph by paragraph what needs to be changed to reflect what has been done. And I'm happy to make some text proposals on the paragraphs to see how we can reflect these issues, if with your permission, Mr. Chairman and Rapporteur. Thanks.
Yes, thanks, Chairman. I agree with this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm reading little a. Okay, I have an English one. Work with the National Commission for Indigenous Peoples to resolve any outstanding land claims to ensure there is a broad-based support for the nomination of the site and that any future use of the area does not compromise the outstanding universal value of the site. Is that okay?
Everybody agree to the paragraph? Germany, please.
Reflecting what has been provided by the state party, I would suggest that we change the beginning of the paragraph and say, continue the work with and then the rest of the paragraph stays as it is. Thank you.
B. Finalize a memorandum of understanding with stakeholders to secure cooperation on the protection and management of the site. So they did something about a man. Please, is there any comments?
Je donne la parole à Smith.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Au vu des informations reçues, je pense que ce point peut être enlevé de la décision. Et en plus, je propose ensuite, plus bas, d'ajouter un point où on félicite l'État partie pour avoir finalisé ce mémorandum d'entente avec les parties prenantes, etc., dans la décision. Merci.
I call on Switzerland if you can, I think, express clearly what do you want to add to the paragraph.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ma proposition était de faire un point plus bas, donc un point 3, en soi ou tout seul, où on félicite vraiment l'État partie pour cela, pour donner aussi, pour souligner ce point. Merci. Je peux lire une proposition si vous voulez. Alors, félicite l'État partie pour avoir finalisé le mémorandum d'entente avec les parties prenantes pour obtenir leur coopération en matière de protection et de gestion du site.
Plus lentement, s'il vous plaît.
Félicite l'État partie pour avoir finalisé le mémorandum d'entente avec les parties prenantes pour obtenir leur coopération en matière de protection et de gestion du site. Et j'avais encore une question. Est-ce que ce mémorandum, on l'a reçu? Sinon, on pourrait encore ajouter « Demande à l'État partie de le soumettre par écrit au Centre du patrimoine mondial ». Mais je ne sais pas si on l'a reçu ou pas encore. Merci.
So you decide we will adopt this paragraph later. I will read paragraph C. We strike out number B. We are now on number C. Consider future expansion of the site to include important nesting habitat for endangered species such as the Philippine eagle, and to furthermore expand the buffer zone in order to enhance the integrity of the site. We have already proposal from the state part, from the Malaysia. We can use maybe part of it, but if you have another proposal, it's welcome.
Floor to Germany.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The paragraph C could read, implement, if this is the right word, I would need some help from the rapporteur, implement the envisaged expansion of the site to include important nesting habitat for endangered species as the sea eagle, and implement the envisaged expansion of the buffer zone in order to enhance the integrity of the site.
Please repeat.
It's just changing the very first, just in the beginning of the paragraph, replace consider future by implement the envisaged. Implement the envisaged. Yeah. And then replace further down in the paragraph and implement the envisaged expansion of the buffer zone. No, after the Philippine eagle. Sorry. Yeah, exactly. And then the rest says that it is. And then we are done.
France, La France, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Avec votre permission, je voudrais remonter un tout petit peu plus haut dans le projet qui nous est soumis. Voilà, encore un tout petit peu plus haut. Voilà, nous nous interrogeons en fait sur l'opportunité d'avoir les références à un mémorandum d'entente et nous souhaitons que cette disposition ne figure pas dans le projet qui nous sera soumis et qui relève de l'ordre juridique interne. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are going now to number D. Prepare a detailed visitor and tourism management plan as a sub-plan to the management plan in recognition of the potential for increasing pressure for access and higher numbers of park visitors. Such a plan should be prepared in consultation with local communities to anticipate and plan for the impact of opening the site to increased visitation and to ensure that local people share in the benefits of future tourism use of the site.
Is it okay, the paragraph? Rapporteur, please. Rapporteur.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. I'm reading number E. Develop and implement a research and monitoring program to assess and adapt to the impact of climate change on the site. This one, Mr. Chair, we can adopt as well because it's absolutely the same. It stays the same. Nothing has changed here.
No comment for the paragraph. Please go ahead, Rapporteur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Number F. Consider the progressive nomination of further serial extensions to the site to include other significant reserves on Mindanao. As well, we didn't have any objection on this.
Secretariat requested, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that this cannot be considered as a condition for the referral, so it would rather be better to take this out as a separate point. It will be a new point, not in the series of A, B, C, D, E, F.
Please.
We are going to put this as a new paragraph. Thank you. Can I go on?
Please go on.
So now we can have a paragraph félicité. Okay, commands. Number 4.
On the paragraph number 4. No.
Please, can I have a number 4 on the screen? Commends the state party for having finalized the memorandum of understanding with the stakeholders to secure their cooperation in the management and protection of the site. So this is what France objected, Mr. Chair, and some of the delegations, they mentioned it. Thank you.
Any comment on the paragraph? You have the floor, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Concernant le point 4, nous nous interrogeons sur l'utilité de l'inclure dans le projet.
il ne nous semble pas nécessairement opportun de rajouter cet élément.
Switzerland, do you agree to this? Switzerland, do you agree to the new paragraph number 4?
France is proposing deletion. Does Switzerland agree?
Because France proposed the deletion. So Switzerland can agree to this?
On avait mis ce point-là parce qu'on l'avait enlevé des demandes, et donc c'était pour souligner qu'une demande avait été remplie et que le mémorandum avait été présenté. Et c'était pour ça qu'on avait demandé de féliciter l'État pour ça, parce que c'est un avancement important dans le dossier. Si le comité pense qu'il faudrait enlever ce point, nous sommes ouverts à la discussion, évidemment.
Here, please. Malaysia, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, once again. I would like to refer to number 3 there in the English version. As the discussion went, majority of us thought the property in question can stand on its own. The possibility of the future serial extension does not crop up yet. Thank you, Chair.
Ian, you have the floor.
Sorry, thanks, Chair. Just to respond to the point that Malaysia raised, that's the reason to take that item out of the previous status of being a subparagraph of the referral, so 2F as it was before, and make it a separate 3. I think the problem with it is there's some language missing to make it a separate paragraph. But the point of the referral, which you're recommending, is based on the evaluation of AUCN that within the larger area of Mount Hamaguitan there is an adequate basis to recognise criterion 10. And AUCN, I completely agree with the point from Malaysia, was not suggesting that there needs to be a serial nomination to meet the criterion, that is a separate issue. That would be something for the future, and on the basis of the decision the committee is moving towards. For now, it will be a referral of what is currently put forward, and the new information from the state party would be incorporated quite quickly. And then separately to that, these other mountaintop and lowland forest reserves on Mindanao could be considered. So that's the intention, and I think Malaysia's point is exactly right. And there just needs to be the drafting, which I think the rapporteur or the scribes are catching up with, to address the point that you're raising, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I call on United Arab Emirates, please.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. نحن نعتقد أن هناك التباس بين المعلومات التي وصلت متأخرة، وصرنا مقتنعين بأهميتها، وبين أن نطالب بهذه المعلومات من جديد في صياغة القرار. فنحن نعترف أن المعلومات صحيحة ولكن وصلت متأخرة، ونحن نصيغ القرار هنا ممكن أن نشيد بهذه المعلومات التي وصلت متأخرة على أن تعمل الدولة الطرف على إحضارها مع بقية النواقص التي أو الشواغل التي عبرت عنها IUCN في استيفاء إدراج هذا الموقع. فأنا أعتقد أنه IUCN مداخلتهم الأخيرة قد أشارت إلى هذا الأمر. الذي نريد أن نوضحه أن المعلومات التي وفرتها الدولة هي تلبي كثير من النواقص ولكنها غير مقبولة في الوقت الراهن. فنحن إما أن نعترف بأن هذه المعلومات قيمة ولكن وصلت متأخرة وسيستفاد منها عند عرض طلب الإدراج للسنة القادمة ونتجنب المطالبة بها في هذا القرار.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a matter of clarification, I'd like to clarify that this information was actually never received by the Weather Data Center. It was only received informally and after the deadline by IUCN, so I think it will be useful to leaving this.
Rapporteur, please.
We have true proposition and two possibilities here. We would like to say that State Party has made certain progress, and actually in original draft decision there was a paragraph 3 where we say commands the State Party and the range of stakeholders, etc. And then we have a new proposition of new paragraph that actually commands the State Party for this memorandum of understanding, which is very important for the local stakeholders. So the progress has been made. So either you delete the paragraph as France suggested, that one where we say we command and leave the original paragraph, or we delete the original paragraph and leave this one that was proposed by Switzerland. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All on India, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering why we only criticize states parties. When something has happened, why don't we commend them? And I think it's important because stakeholders, the community, has actually involved itself, has actually come forward. If you do not do this, you are going to be a committee of school teachers. So I would suggest that where the state party has carried out a positive action, and much more than the state party, local communities, each has gone out and met each other, you've got a positive result. Let us be, I'm not saying kind, but let us be appreciative. Is there a problem in being appreciative? Must we only criticize? Thank you, Chair.
Call on Germany, please.
Thank you. We would agree with keeping the paragraph, or having the paragraph as suggested by Switzerland, taking into account what the Indian colleague has just said, and we confirm, yeah, we have to submit some positive message here. Thanks.
Suisse, vous avez la parole. La Suisse, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. On voulait aussi soutenir ce point qu'on avait proposé. On peut peut-être trouver une solution dans ce sens, parce que c'est vrai que on est un peu, pas tout le monde a eu les mêmes informations, donc on pourrait ajouter encore à cette question et demande à l'État partie de le soumettre par écrit, donc de soumettre ce mémorandum par écrit au Centre du patrimoine mondial dans les plus courts délais. Par exemple, une solution de ce type où on ajoute aussi la demande de le présenter, ce mémorandum. Justement, j'avais posé la question quand j'avais proposé ce point, parce que je ne savais pas si le mémorandum avait été présenté ou pas au centre.
France, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Dans la formulation telle qu'elle était initialement proposée, nous pouvons nous y rallier sans problème. Sans le rajout qui est proposé par la Suisse, nous l'acceptons sans problème. Donc la première version nous semble meilleure que celle qui éventuellement pourrait être augmentée d'un morceau de paragraphe.
Ce paragraphe 4 est accepté? Oui. Rapporteur, s'il vous plaît, continuez.
I'm going to read the paragraph as it was amended just now. Commends the state party for having finalized the memorandum of understanding with the stakeholders to secure their cooperation in the management and protection in the site, and requests the state party to submit it to the World Heritage Center as soon as possible, which was proposed by Switzerland. Please put that it was proposed with Switzerland down.
For Malaysia, please.
Thank you, Chair, once again. We would like to support number 4, Chair, but omit number 3 above that. This is not relevant at the present moment. Thank you, Chair.
You think we have to delete the number 3? IUCN, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just to sort of reiterate the point, I agree with Malaysia that this is a separate point to the question of referral, but it is an important concept in our view in terms of the future potential to add to this site if it is inscribed by the committee at its next session or in the next session or two. So just to explain the point, it's for the committee to decide if it wishes to retain it. The contention is that this should be, if it's retained, a separate item to the referral, and it should be something for longer-term consideration of the state party that would only be relevant after the point at which the committee might have decided to inscribe Mount Hamiguitan on the World Heritage List. But we would contend it's an important point, and I think we would contend it's helpful to the state party because it would record the intention of the World Heritage Committee to recognise further areas on Mindanao at some point in the future, rather than leave that question still open. But it is completely for the committee to decide if it wishes to retain the point or not. Thank you, Chair.
We have to delete?
Yes, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Can the committee now adopt the decision as the mandate? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that we agreed upon the proposition, so you can proceed to the adoption of whole decision. Thank you.
So we have no more comment. I request the committee to adopt the whole text. So le texte est adopté. Now we came to point A, point 2, point 2. Property defer or refer back by previous session of the World Heritage Committee. Tajik National Park, Mountain of the Pamirs, Tajikistan. Draft decision 37.BB.14. I now invite IUCN to present the nomination of the Tajik National Park, Mountain of the Pamir, Tajikistan. IUCN, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. IUCN's evaluation of this property is on page 99 of the English version of the IUCN evaluation report and page 101 of the French version. The nominated property, Tajik National Park, Mountains of the Pamirs, coincides with Tajik National Park itself, an area of 2,611,000 hectares, located in the eastern part of Tajikistan and covering 18% of the entire country. There is no formal buffer zone, as the remoteness and rugged character of the sparsely inhabited surrounding mountains are considered to constitute an adequate physical buffer. In 2009/10, a smaller percentage of the Tajik National Park was nominated, covering a core area and buffer zone, all within the boundaries of the park. The IUCN evaluation and committee decision noted that the property met criteria 7 and 8, and that these values could be strengthened by adding additional areas in the Tajik National Park. The committee deferred the nomination to allow the state party to refocus a nomination on criteria 7 and 8 and address a number of other issues. The Pamirs are the third highest mountain system in the world, and Tajik National Park the largest protected area in the Palearctic realm. There are 1,085 recorded glaciers within the nominated property, with more than 1,000 of these are more than 1.5 kilometres in length, and a dozen of these exceed 20 kilometres in length. The Fedchenko Glacier, at a length of 77 kilometres, is the world's longest outside of the polar regions. The visual combination of some of the deepest gorges in the world, surrounded by rugged glaciated peaks, as well as the alpine desert and lakes of the Pamir High Plateau, adds up to an alpine wilderness of exceptional natural beauty. The property also contains more than 400 lakes, including the highest naturally dammed lake in the world, youngest high-altitude lake, and the world's highest lake of meteoric origin. The Pamir Mountains are a major centre of glaciation on the Eurasian continent, a protected area, an outstanding juxtaposition of many high mountains, valley glaciers and deep river gorges, alongside the cold continental desert environment of the high Pamir Plateau landforms. The Fedchenko Glacier itself is a globally superlative exemplar of glaciation processes. An outstanding landform feature of the property's geologically dynamic terrain is Lake Serez, created in 1911 by a magnitude 9 earthquake, generating a landslide of an estimated 6 billion tonnes of material, and is possibly the youngest deep-water alpine lake in the world. Tajik National Park furthermore offers a unique opportunity for the study of plate tectonics and continental subduction phenomena, thereby contributing to our fundamental understanding of earth-building processes. Tajik National Park alone does not appear to be the most biologically diverse and or representative site of the region. Due to its high elevation and aridity, the property has relatively low species diversity for both flora and fauna. The property coincides with a biodiversity hotspot, the mountains of Central Asia. However, it only covers 3% of this hotspot. Furthermore, only 10% of the park is biogenic, being landscapes formed under the influence of living organisms, the rest being rock, snow and ice. IUCN concludes that Tajik National Park's biodiversity is unlikely to match or exceed that of existing or proposed high mountain World Heritage properties in Inner Asia. The same holds true with regard to endemism, and Tajik National Park is home to only a small number of globally threatened species. The property is protected under the national laws, and the category of national park enjoys the highest protection status in Tajikistan. The legislative framework and management arrangements for the property are comprehensive and clear, and all activities that could threaten the integrity of the property, including mining, are legally prohibited. There is a medium-term management plan approved by the government, and the State Agency of Natural Protected Areas is responsible for coordination of all activities in the park. The implementation of the management plan involves the participation of local communities, and their traditional rights over the use of natural resources are respected. Financial resources for the property are modest, and opportunities should be explored to secure additional international support and develop tourism revenue opportunities. IUCN would like to note that the 2010 deferral by the World Heritage Committee of Tajik National Park's nomination has been particularly effective in improving this nomination that has come back to the committee at this session. So in summary, IUCN considers the property meets natural criteria 7 and 8 and satisfies the necessary integrity, protection and management requirements. IUCN duly recommends that the committee inscribes the Tajik National Park under natural criterion 7 and 8 with a number of recommendations to improve future management and cooperation. And the draft decision is set out on page 12 of both the English and French version of Working Document 8B. Thank you, Chair.
I open the floor for comment. I call on Japan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Japan would like to support this Tajik National Park for inscription, which is the first inscription in Tajikistan as a natural heritage on a natural heritage list, World Heritage List. Japan also commend the tremendous effort made by the state party after the decision of the deferral in 2010. Thank you.
Mr. Nia, you have the floor.
Thank you for the floor. The unique high mountainous area of Pamir is an expected and upstanding addition to the natural sites of World Heritage. We appreciate the huge work done by the state party for the nomination, especially making good use of the deferral process. Estonia congratulates Tajikistan for receiving international recognition for holding the roof of the world on their shoulders. Thank you.
Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Germany joins the previous speakers in congratulating the state party for this convincing nomination. And I would also like to recall that 4 years ago this site has been deferred, and in the meanwhile the nomination has been improved considerably, and we can adopt today with pleasure. Thank you.
Call on United Arab Emirates, please.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. نحن نهني طاجكستان على هذا الموقع الفريد والذي يشكل كما عبر من تكلم قبلنا إضافة نوعية لمواقع التراث العالمي. نشيد بجهود IUCN في التي بذلت لجعل هذا الموقع مستوفيا لشروط الإدراج. الإمارات تدعم هذا الإدراج وتهني الدولة الطرف. شكرا.
On Russia, please.
Российская Федерация также приветствует и поздравляет таджикских коллег за столь качественные подготовленные документы, обеспечившие принятие номинации. Рады за то, что удалось сделать обеспечить столь отличное состояние сохранности данного объекта и то, что этот объект является первым объектом. Желаем дальнейших успехов.
No more comment. Algérie, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. L'Algérie donc félicite l'État partie et l'UICN pour cette emblématique proposition et appuie l'option donc d'inscription de ce site, le premier site donc du Tadjikistan dans la liste du patrimoine mondial. Merci.
Donne la parole à la délégation du Cambodge.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le rapport de l'UICN a montré que ce site magnifique répond aux exigences de l'inscription. Le Cambodge appuie donc son inscription.
Donne la parole à la France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La France félicite le Tadjikistan pour cette proposition d'inscription et c'est une grande première dont nous nous réjouissons. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
If there are no more comment or objection, I now declare decision 37.8b.14 adopted. Let me congratulate Tajikistan on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. Tajikistan, you have the floor for a brief 2-minute statement. Thank you. Please, you have the floor.
Уважаемый господин председатель, уважаемые члены Комитета всемирного наследия ЮНЕСКО, дамы и господа, пользуясь случаем, хочу поблагодарить правительство Королевской Камбоджи за организацию и радушный прием. Позвольте от имени правительства Республики Таджикистан искренне поблагодарить вас за поддержку номинации Таджикский национальный парк в список всемирного природного наследия ЮНЕСКо. Теперь он является первым природным объектом Таджикистана, включенным в список ЮНЕСКо. Таджикский национальный парк в силу ряда своих природных и ландшафтных особенностей является поистине уникальным объектом, обладающим мировыми природными ценностями. Национальный парк был образован с целью сохранения уникальных ландшафтов по миру, разнообразия редких и исчезающих видов флоры и фауны, историко-культурных и природных памятников, развития туризма, устойчивого использования природных ресурсов и улучшения уровня жизни населения, проживающего в зоне парка. Важно также отметить, что общая площадь парка составляет 2,6 миллионов гектаров, что составляет более 18% территории Республики Таджикистан. Также хотелось бы поблагодарить всех вовлеченных в процесс подготовки нашей номинации, в частности, Международный союз охраны природы, экспертов за плодотворное участие в процессе подготовки номинации. Дамы и господа, общеизвестно, что Республика Таджикистан является инициатором ряда глобальных программ по бережному отношению к использованию природных ресурсов, в том числе программы «Десятилетие вода для жизни» на международном уровне. В свою очередь, правительство Таджикистана приложит необходимые усилия для сохранения уникальных природных ландшафтов, биологического разнообразия и историко-культурных ценностей парка в сотрудничестве с Центром всемирного наследия и ЮНЕСКО. Благодарю за внимание.
Thanks, Excellency, the Minister of Culture of Tajikistan. Now we came to item A.3, Europe, North America. A.3.1, new nomination. We came to the Mount Etna, Italy. Draft decision 37.8b.15. I now invite IUCN to present the nomination of Mount Etna, Italy. IUCN, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. IUCN's evaluation of this property is on page 75 of both the English and French versions of the IUCN report. This nominated property, Mount Etna, encompasses the 19,000, just slightly more than 19,000 hectare core zone of Etna Park, which is a regional nature park on the eastern coast of Sicily, the largest Mediterranean island. The property is surrounded by a buffer zone of over 25,000 hectares, but that's not included in the nominated area. Reaching 3,335 metres above sea level, Mount Etna is the highest mountain in Italy south of the Alps, the highest mountain in the central Mediterranean, and the highest mountain on any Mediterranean island. Mount Etna is a large basaltic composite volcano. It has a complex eruptive history which can be traced back for over 500,000 years, and its activity has been documented by people for almost 3,000 years, one of the longest documented records of historical volcanism. The volcano is characterized by almost continuous eruptive activity from its summit craters, with frequent lava flow eruptions from craters and fissures on its flanks. Mount Etna is an imposing stratovolcano towering distinctively over Sicily. However, there are other volcanoes currently inscribed on the World Heritage List, and many not inscribed on the list that have greater scale and scenic significance, and IUCN does not consider that this property meets criterion 7. However, Mount Etna is one of the world's most active and iconic volcanoes, an outstanding example of ongoing geological processes and volcanic landforms, and the stratovolcano is characterized by this almost continuous eruptive activity. The diverse and accessible assemblage of volcanic features, such as summit craters, cinder cones, lava flows, have made it a prime place for centuries for research and education, and it is today one of the best studied and monitored volcanoes in the world. It continues to influence volcanology, geophysics, and other earth science disciplines, and its notoriety, scientific importance, and its cultural and educational values associated with that importance are of global significance. IUCN considers that the property meets criterion 8. However, IUCN would like to note that its panel debated the committee's previous consideration on the continued growth of the representation of volcanoes on the World Heritage List, including those like Etna that present a history of Western and European geological sciences, and it considers that a revisiting of its thematic study in this area would be relevant given the committee's previous guidance to ensure that the approach to recognising volcanoes on the World Heritage List delivers an equitable and global approach. In relation to ecosystems, as an isolated island volcano in the Mediterranean Basin biodiversity hotspot, Mount Etna certainly supports important terrestrial ecosystems and communities, including endemic flora and fauna. Like many protected volcanoes, it provides a natural laboratory for the study of ecological and biological processes in disturbed ground. However, the limited size of the nominated property does not capture these processes, and we consider these are also of more a regional than a global value, and that the property does not meet criterion 9. The nominated property encompasses only the most strictly protected part of Etna Park, and overlapping legal protection provides additional protection for 77% of the nominated area, and the regulations provided within the decree that established the regional nature park provide adequate protection to the property. The boundaries of the nominated property are clearly defined. They encompass the most outstanding features in relation to criterion 8. The management of Etna Park, including the nominated property, is guided by a long-term management plan, and presently the triennial programme up till 2013 is in force. However, content related to the geological processes needs to be strengthened. In conclusion and in summary, IUCN considers that the property meets natural criterion 8, the relevant integrity, protection and management requirements in relation to that criterion, and we duly recommend to the World Heritage Committee that Mount Etna be inscribed on the World Heritage List under criterion 8. And the draft decision, Mr. Chair, is set out at page 13 of the English and 14 of the French versions of Working Document 8B. Thank you.
Pen for comment, please. Je donne la parole à la France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. François-René de Chateaubriand, ambassadeur de France en Italie, grand écrivain français, évoquait en ces termes le bien aujourd'hui soumis à l'inscription. Je ne résiste pas au plaisir de partager avec vous ces termes. Un jour, j'étais montée au sommet de l'Etna, volcan qui brûle au milieu du Nil.
je vis le soleil se lever dans l'immensité de l'horizon au-dessus de moi. Nous aussi, imprégnés par cette belle perspective, souscrivons pleinement à la proposition d'inscription de l'Etna sur la liste du patrimoine mondial. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. I give the floor to Japan, please.
Thank you, Chairperson. Japan supports the inscription of Mount Etna on the World Heritage List, and also supports the paragraph 9 of the draft decision, which requests IUCN to revisit and update its thematic study on volcanoes. The impact of this study of volcanoes on our previous nomination was large, and although we welcome a short and appropriately balanced list of strongest candidate volcano sites with potential for inscription on World Heritage List, we think the site not on this list should not be excluded from the beginning of the evaluation. Also, we would like to ask IUCN to consider the revision of previous thematic study on geological sites, the Geological World Heritage, a global framework. This study was published in 2005, but has not been used or mentioned much in the evaluation reports. The study proposing 13 themes, but for us it was difficult to distinguish some of them and was not practical. It will be useful if the study includes the difference between the criterion 8 of the World Heritage and the value of geoparks. And finally, I think Mount Etna is an iconic and important mountain for the people of Italy, like the one in our country. And Japan would like to congratulate the people of Italy for successful nomination of Mount Etna. Thank you.
Call on Germany, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Germany congratulates Italy for this nomination and would like to draw the committee's attention more specifically to paragraph 8 of the draft decision, which recommends to addressing the sustainable development in the wider region, possibly through integration of experiences from the UNESCO Man and Biosphere Program. We believe that this is a useful proposal and could be a good example for the cooperation between two UNESCO programs, not only in Mount Etna, but maybe also in other properties. Thank you.
I yield the floor to Mexico, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. México apoya la inscripción y quiere felicitar al Estado parte por su esfuerzo al enriquecer con esta candidatura de un bien natural la lista de Patrimonio Mundial. Monte Etna es un paisaje emblemático y nos congratulamos por esta candidatura que ha contado con el compromiso, apoyo y amplia participación de autoridades, personal de parques, científicos, instituciones, sociedad y organizaciones no gubernamentales. Muchas felicidades.
Colombia, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Quisiéramos hacer un reconocimiento al Estado italiano por esta importante nominación y por el excelente expediente que han presentado. Tiene un clarísimo valor universal excepcional, tanto por las características culturales, científicas y educativas que proporciona no solamente al Estado italiano, sino a toda la humanidad. En este sentido, nosotros respaldamos la propuesta de inscribir el sitio en la lista del Patrimonio Mundial, haciendo un especial énfasis en que la UICN debe revisar su listado de volcanes de Patrimonio Mundial para que pueda inscribir este lugar también. Asimismo, hacemos una invitación al Estado italiano para que implemente las recomendaciones hechas por el Comité para que afiance su espíritu de conservación y protección demostrado en todos sus bienes hasta este momento. Felicitaciones pues a Italia y muchas gracias.
Q Colombia, I invite Serbia to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We would like to congratulate the Italy for preparation of good nomination, and also it's important in the future to support recommendation to improve integration of the property into buffer zone, into the wider landscape, what was also mentioned before during this discussion. So once again, we support inscription.
Qatar, you have the floor.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. لا يسعنا إلا أن نهنئ إيطاليا على هذا الملف وعلى اقتراح التسجيل. هذا البركان له طبعا سمعة عالمية، وعموما تسجيل البراكين يعني أو هذا البركان أمر جيد، ولا يسعنا أن نقف في وجه الطبيعة، لأن هذه البراكين تدلنا على قوة الطبيعة، وإذا عطست البراكين توقفت الحياة. شكرا جزيلا.
J'invite la délégation du Cambodge.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Cambodge félicite également l'État partie pour l'inscription de ce site magnifique et historique. Le Cambodge rejoint l'Allemagne sur le paragraphe 8. Je vous remercie.
Call on United Arab Emirates, please.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس. الإمارات بدورها تؤيد هذا القرار وتهنئ إيطاليا على تسجيل هذا الموقع الفريد والبديع، وشكرا.
South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to join in congratulating Italy and use the exact words used by Colombia for this important site. And I'd like to add that it's a well-known site, and growing up as a young person, there was always a question about Man and Etna in all the crossword puzzles that I did. Congratulations, Italy.
Algérie, vous avez la parole.
Monsieur le Président, nous nous associons donc aux autres membres donc pour saluer et féliciter l'Italie pour cet acquis formidable, donc l'inscription de ce site dans la liste du patrimoine mondial. Merci.
La Mali, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Mali s'associe aux autres membres et félicite l'Italie pour l'inscription de ces sites. Merci.
Si, I call on la Suisse.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous nous associons à cette véritable éruption de laudatio en faveur de l'inscription de ce bien sur la liste du patrimoine. Merci.
UCN, if you have something to add.
Thank you, Chair. It was only just to come back on one point that had been raised by Japan in relation to the not the study that's mentioned in the decision, but the larger framework for geological heritage, and just to respond to the suggestion from Japan that could also be updated, including in terms of the relationship between World Heritage and the recognition of geoparks, which I must say has really strengthened enormously as a program in both its quality and its conceptualization in UNESCO since we wrote that study. And I think that would be very relevant, and we'd like to speak to Japan further about how that might be carried forward. So just to respond to that specific point, thank you for the suggestion, and we'd be very pleased to respond to it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think everybody is supporting. I now declare decision 37.8b.15 adopted. Let me congratulate Italy on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. Italy, you have the floor for a brief 2-minute statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, distinguished members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, we are very moved and touched, and we would like to sincerely thank you for the decision to inscribe Mount Etna in the World Heritage List. We would like to thank the World Heritage Center and IUCN for their cooperation, precious suggestions and evaluation. And let me take this opportunity to also thank and congratulate warmly the Cambodian authorities and people for their immense hospitality and magnificent organization of this session. This nomination is the result of many years of work carried out by the Etna Park and the Italian Ministry of Environment, and it is the result of 2 decades of technical meetings and high-ranking conferences among national and international experts, as well as representatives from Mediterranean countries, WHC, IUCN, ICROM, and ICOMOS. As was said, Mount Etna is the highest active and largest subaerial volcano in Europe. Further, Etna represents a laboratory for experts from all over the world and a never-ending source of geological data of regional and global interest, thanks to the multi-decade monitoring network and activities promoted by the park and the region of Sicily. And now I would share the last moments of my time with my colleague Di Bella from the Ministry of Environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Just to point out that Etna Park has been established since 1987, and of course it was named, it was meant to ensure protection and defense of the volcanic iconic values, also for respect to the environment. Just to point out that we do appreciate the MAB program, perspective, also because we have this authority which can really support this project. So just I want just to thank all state members for this recognition. Thank you so much.
I express my thanks to His Excellency Ambassador of Italy. Now we came to the item A4, Latin America and Caribbean. A.4.1, new nomination. El Pinaquet and Gran Deserto, the Alta Biosphere Reserve, Mexico. Draft decision 37.8b.16. Now I invite IUCN to present the nomination of the El Pinaquet and Gran Deserto, the Alta Biosphere Reserve, Mexico. IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. IUCN's evaluation of this property is on page 85 of both the English and the French versions of the IUCN evaluation report. This is also the final natural site nomination being considered by the committee this year. El Pinacate and the Gran Desierto de Altar National Biosphere Reserve is located in the Sonoran Desert, one of the 4 great North American deserts. The entire nominated property is in the Mexican state of Sonora, and its revised boundaries, considered during the nomination process, have been harmonized with the National Biosphere Reserve, and they have an area of 714,566 hectares surrounded on a number of sides by a buffer zone of 354,872 hectares. I read those numbers out precisely because there's a slight typo, I think, that will be corrected by the Secretariat in the papers, but has no consequence on this evaluation. To the north, the nominated property abuts the border with the United States of America. Next slide, please. The property is nominated under criteria 7, 8 and 10. The diverse and visually stunning desert landscape of the property comprises two very distinct broad landscape types. One is a dormant volcanic area to the east with extensive black and red lava flows and desert pavement, while to the west and the south is the Grand Altar Desert, North America's largest field of active sand dunes. Next slide, please. The volcanic shield in the property boasts a wide array of volcanic phenomena and geological formations, including the striking concentration of 10 enormous, deep and almost perfectly circular steam blast craters. The very large linear dunes, star dunes and dome dunes, displaying enormous and constantly changing contrasts in terms of form and colour, are located in the property. The combination of all these features results in a highly diverse and a visually stunning desert landscape which meets criterion 7. This same vast sea of sand dunes that surrounds the volcanic shield is considered the largest and most active dune system in North America. It includes a diverse range of dunes that are nearly undisturbed and includes spectacular and very large star-shaped dunes that occur both singly and in long ridges approaching 50 kilometres in length. The volcanic exposures provide important complementary geological values, and the desert environment assures their dramatic display. Taken together, the combination of earth science features is an impressive laboratory for geological and geomorphological studies, and in particular, the desert system with its dunes is also another desert that's been noted in past thematic studies as having high potential for recognition on the World Heritage List. In summary, IUCN considers that the property meets criterion 8. In relation to biodiversity, the highly diverse mosaic of habitats is home to complex communities and surprisingly high species diversity across many taxonomic groups of flora and fauna. This includes 540 species of vascular plants, in fact probably more than that, 44 mammals, more than 200 birds, over 40 reptiles, which inhabit what seems otherwise to be an inhospitable area. Several endemic species of plants and animals exist, including 2 freshwater fish species, and there are large and notable maternity caves of the migratory lesser long-nosed bat, which is an important pollinator and seed dispersal vector. And the protected species in the property include the threatened Sonoran pronghorn. Next slide. El Pinacate y Gran Desierto de Altar Biosphere Reserve was nationally declared by presidential decree. It's within an area recognized as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, and the site's large size, remoteness, harsh climate and terrain contribute to a high degree of natural protection. And the large contiguous conservation units, including those in the United States of America that surround this property, further contribute to the protection of its values. Both the nominated area and the buffer zones include full formal protected area status. All Mexican biosphere reserves have mandatory management programs, and the present program dates from 1995 and is currently being updated through a participatory process. Facilities include a biological station, housing and office space. There are several ranger stations along 3 key roads providing access to those areas, and a visitor centre is under construction and aiming to promote tourism. Despite important educational and economic opportunities, it does need to be recalled that this fragile and inhospitable desert environment does set tight limits to the degree of visitation without impacting on values. In summary, IUCN considers that the property meets the relevant natural criteria. It meets the integrity and protection and management requirements expected in the World Heritage Convention, and we duly recommend the World Heritage Committee inscribe the property under all of the criteria under which it has been nominated. And the draft decision, Mr. Chairperson, is at page 15 of the English, page 16 of the French versions of Working Document 8B. Thank you, Chair.
I open the floor for discussion. I call on Colombia, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. México siempre nos sorprende con esa labor continua que ya es una tradición de elaborar unos excelentes, novedosos e ingeniosos expedientes de nominación. Asimismo, México ha hecho un esfuerzo por incluir en la lista del Patrimonio Mundial diversos escenarios que dan muestra de su enorme biodiversidad, que van desde la selva húmeda tropical hasta desiertos como este que hoy tratamos. Miramos siempre con orgullo y, por qué no decirlo, con algo de envidia a México, y en ese sentido, felicitaciones a México por esta inscripción. Gracias.
Call on United Arab Emirates, please.
الإمارات بدورها تنتهز هذه الفرصة لتهني المكسيك على هذا الإدراج الفريد أيضا، ولا يسعنا إلا أن نقدر جهود الدولة الطرف على ما بذلته لإثراء هذا الموقع وتمكينه من إدراجه على قائمة التراث العالمي. كما نود أن نشكر الIUCN على جهودهم المقدرة. نهنئ المكسيك مرة ثانية، ويثير شجوننا هذا الموقع لأننا على علاقة بالصحراء، وربما دفعنا للتفكير في التعامل مع مواقعنا الصحراوية في المستقبل. شكرا.
Thank you. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also would like to congratulate Mexico for this nomination, convincing nomination. And I would like to recall that we started with the inscription of a desert in the morning. Later in the day, we inscribed the Etna in Italy, a volcano. And now we have a desert and a volcano, so this concludes our exercise today in a very perfect manner. Thank you.
I call on Russia. Russia, you have the floor.
Уважаемые коллеги, уважаемые представители делегации Мексики, мы от всей души поздравляем вас с включением в список всемирного наследия столь замечательного, красивого объекта. Приветствуем, высоко оцениваем работу, выполненную мексиканскими специалистами и специалистами IUCN, потому что я считаю четко, что когда мы вписываем что-то, это победа и консультативных органов. Ну, поскольку у нас сегодня день гор и пустынь, насколько я понимаю, то мы еще одну красоту вписали в список всемирного наследия. Еще раз от всей души поздравляю вас.
Donne la parole à la France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La France s'associe volontiers aux félicitations qui viennent d'être énoncées et à son tour adresse ses plus chaleureuses félicitations au Mexique, qui est un partenaire de longue date du patrimoine mondial et qui s'est distingué pour la qualité de ses dossiers et de son travail au sein de ce comité. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Malaysia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Malaysia echoes Germany and Russia on this special nomination, another dunes and desert landscape for today. And its impressive criteria 7, 8, and 10 is something very special. And we would like to congratulate Mexico for El Pinacate. Thank you.
I call on Qatar, please.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس. نحن نريد بدورنا أن نهنئ جيراننا المكسيك. لا أتحدث عن الجوار الجغرافي على خارطة العالم، ولكن جيراننا في هذه القاعة نحن سعداء بالقرب منهم، ونهنئهم على هذا الموقع الجميل الرائع وشكرا.
No more comment. I think, Rapporteur, you introduced the text. No change, huh? So, Cambodia, please. Cambodia.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, le Cambodge a toujours été impressionné par ces grands espaces et se joint donc à nos collègues précédemment pour féliciter le Mexique. Je vous remercie.
Algérie, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous nous joignons aux nombreuses félicitations et aussi nous félicitons le Mexique et les organes consultatifs pour l'excellent travail qu'ils ont fait. Merci.
So Mali, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, nous saisissons cette opportunité pour féliciter l'État partie du Mexique pour la qualité du dossier. Merci.
I see no more comment, so I'd like to proceed to the adoption of the decision. Decision 37.8b.16 is adopted. So let me congratulate Mexico on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. Mexico, you have the floor for a brief 2-minute statement, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. Antes que nada, primeramente nuestro agradecimiento al Reino de Camboya por su amistad y por su hospitalidad. Para muchas personas, científicos y etnias indígenas del mundo, la reserva de la biosfera, el Pinacate y Gran Desierto de Altar es el corazón y es el alma sensible del desierto sonorense, uno de los 4 desiertos de América del Norte. Distinguidos miembros del comité, es un honor dirigirme a ustedes en nombre de México para expresarles nuestro agradecimiento por sus generosos comentarios en este momento, así como al Centro de Patrimonio Mundial de la UNESCO por todo su apoyo en este proceso. De igual manera, nuestro reconocimiento a la UICN por su gran labor que condujo a las recomendaciones que los ha llevado a tomar la decisión de inscribir a nuestra reserva de la biosfera en la honrosa lista de Patrimonio Mundial. El desierto sonorense es considerado como el de mayor diversidad biológica en el mundo entero. En su parte central se ubica esta reserva de la biosfera, que es considerada por investigadores y universidades por todo el mundo como un gran laboratorio de geología y biología a cielo abierto, con sus más de 400 conos volcánicos, enormes flujos y túneles de lava, en caprichosas figuras y la mayor concentración en el mundo de cráteres gigantes rodeados con un extenso mar de dunas. Las combinaciones que se dan en forma constante forman majestuosos y bellos escenarios donde se desarrollan espectaculares especies de flora y fauna totalmente adaptadas al desierto, que en este caso está lleno de vida. Sitio sagrado para los primeros pobladores y para muchos en la actualidad, y de expresión de maravillosa naturaleza que en un ambiente tan árido sigue asombrando por la perfección hasta de la más pequeña de sus flores. El campo de lava es tan vasto y oscuro que, rodeado del mar de blancas dunas en constante movimiento, es fácilmente identificado desde el espacio por su asombroso parecido con la superficie lunar. La NASA solicitó permiso a México para realizar entrenamientos de por lo menos 30 astronautas para las misiones Apolo en la década de los 60. La Reserva de la Biosfera cumplió recientemente el 20 aniversario de su creación, ocurrida el día 10 de junio de 1993. ¿Qué mejor regalo de aniversario que esta honrosa inscripción en la lista de Patrimonio Mundial? Han sido 20 años de duras jornadas, pero también de muchas satisfacciones. Para quienes tenemos la grandiosa oportunidad de recorrer este territorio tan único, generalmente nos provoca un sentimiento de mucho respeto por la dinámica de la Tierra, su energía y sus increíbles maneras de demostrarlo. Nos recuerda nuestro lugar como humanidad en el espacio y en el tiempo, y nos ubica como parte de la naturaleza, no como sus dueños. Con mucho orgullo, Sociedad y Gobierno de México reiteramos el compromiso para su protección y con esta inscripción también reconocemos la congruente contribución a la representatividad de la lista de Patrimonio Mundial. Felicidades también al desierto de Namibia. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
I thank the distinguished representative from Mexico. Dear colleague, before moving to the consideration of nomination of mixed property, I wish to inform you that I have received a request from India and Poland to have their cultural nomination discussed today. Do I have your consent for this proposal? No objection, so I have the consent. Now we came to the site Hill Fort of Rajasthan, India. Draft decision 37.8b.31. I now invite ECOMOS to present the nomination of Hill Fort of Rajasthan, India. The draft decision concerning the nomination can be found in document 8b.8. But before I give the floor to the Secretariat, Mr. Balsomo, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to remind that we received a factual error letter for this site, which is in document INF 8B4 and could be found on page 33 of the English version and 33 also of the French version. Thank you, Chair.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I would now like to present the nomination for the Hill Forts of Rajasthan, India. First slide, please. Within the state of Rajasthan, 6 extensive and majestic hill forts together reflect the elaborate fortified seats of power of Rajput princely states that flourished between the 8th and the 18th centuries. The extensive fortifications, up to some 20 kilometers in circumference, exploit the contours of the hills and the river, the dense forests and the desert. Within their defensive walls, the distinctive architecture of palaces and other buildings reflects their role as centres of courtly culture and places of patronage for learning, arts and music.
As well as housing for the court and military guard, forts included urban settlements, some of which have survived, and many had mercantile centres reflecting the trade that underpinned their wealth. Most of the forts also had temples or sacred buildings, some predating the fortifications and outliving the Rajput kingdoms. And collectively, the forts contain extensive water harvesting structures, many of which are still in use. In terms of the categories, can I have the next slide, please? In terms of the categories of cultural property set out in the convention, this is a serial nomination of 6 sites. And you can see the names of the forts: Chittagong, Kumbhalgarh, Ranthambore, Gagron, Amber, and Jaisalmer. Next slide, please. The location of the 6 forts in Rajasthan. Next one, please. This is a referred back nomination. At the 36th session, the World Heritage Committee referred the nomination back to the State Party in order to allow it to provide a more detailed approach for the selection of the component parts, to show that the various categories of military architecture across the range of the Rajput kingdom, and to provide more information on the management of the components. They also recommended that the State Party request an advisory mission to the site to consider how the nomination might be amended. And an ICOMOS advisory mission visited Rajasthan in November 2012. Next slide, please. To take the slides one by one, first of all, Chittagong. Next slide, please. The fortifications of Chittagong are now considered to be one of the finest Hindu defence systems to survive in any degree of completeness. The initial walls were constructed in the 13th century, and their current planning reflects the ideas of Rana Kumbha, the ruler of Mewar state, who, with his artisan Mandan, established the guidelines for Rajput fortifications. The ascent of the fort passes through 7 gateways flanked by hexagonal or octagonal towers, and all protected by enclosing defensive walls. As the former capital of the Sisodia clan and the target of the 3 famous historical sieges, the site is strongly imbued with associational values attached to Rajput history and folklore. Next slide, please. The extent to which it displays buildings that reflect its role as a centre of power make it distinctive from some of the other forts. Furthermore, the sheer number and variety of architectural remains of an early date, ranging from the 8th to the 16th century, mark it out as an exceptional site with which only a few Indian forts are comparable. Within the walls are the extensive remains of palaces, one constructed in the 15th century and a later one shown here, the Padmini Palace, in the 19th century that overlooks a reservoir. Next one. There are many temples within the fort. Although the majority represent the Hindu faith, it also contains Jain temples dating from the 15th century and 2 tower memorials from the 13th to the 14th century, as you can see one of them here. Next slide, please. The fort has 85 historic water structures, of which 20 are still functioning, including 3 water tanks from the 7th century. Now turning to Kumbhalgarh Fort, and there is a site map. Next one, please. The walls of Kumbhalgarh extend to 20 kilometers in length, making them the longest in India and probably the 3rd in the world. Its distinctive contribution to the overall series arises from it having been constructed in a single process in the 15th century, and the way it retains its extraordinary architectural coherence. Its design is attributed to an architect known by name, Mandan, who was also an author and theorist at the court of Rana Kumbha in Chittagong. Next one, please. The palace area contains the 15th century Kumbha Mahal, with integrating both men's and women's apartments, and the much later Bada Mahal, built in the late 19th and early 20th century, which occupies the highest point of the fort, which you can see here. Next one, please. There are a very large number of temples, of which only a small selection are shown. Hindu and Jain temples, dating from the 13th through to some constructed in the 18th century. Next one, please. Kumbulgarh also includes memorials, pleasure pavilions in the historic gardens, stores and noteworthy water structures, such as the largest, the Badfa Bund, a 15th century dam, and another 15th century step well. In all, there are some 10 dams and 20 step wells. Next slide, please. Within the enormous outer fortifications, the very extensive area contains settlements of local communities as well as orchards and fields. Next slide, please. Turning now to Ranthambore Fort. Next slide. Its distinctive contribution to the series arises from it being the only forest fort included in the nomination. Located on Tambor Hill, it stands guard over former royal hunting grounds, and the dense jungle in all directions from the fort constituted an added defence feature. The fortifications date between the 5th and 16th centuries. Next slide, please. Within the walls, there are the two palaces of an early date from the 13th and 14th centuries, the Hamir Mahal and the Rani Mahal. And they are dominant within the palace area. The remains of the 13th century Hamir Palace, which you can see details below, are amongst the oldest surviving structures of any Indian palace. Next one, please. Among the religious structures are Hindu temples founded as early as the 5th century, and also the remains of a mosque and Muslim burial ground dating to the 13th or 14th century. Next one, please. The significant feature in Ranthambore Fort are the trees and pleasure pavilions added in the 18th century, although there is little evidence left of what must have been very significant pleasure gardens. Next slide, please. Turning now to Gagron Fort. Next slide, please. The distinctive contribution of Gagron to the series arises from it being the only river-protected fort included in the nomination. Its strategic location in a pass in the hills gave it control of important trade routes. Next slide. Within the fort, the buildings are mostly of a late date, around the 18th to 19th centuries. There are a palace area, and there's also temples. And as with the other forts previously described, Gagron includes water reservoirs as well as habitations. And at present, there are about 300 people living within its area. Next one, please. Turning to Amber Fort. Next one. Amber Fort is situated below the connecting hill fort of Jaigarh, with which it has shared fortifications. A 300-metre-long tunnel connects Amber Palace to Jaigarh Fort at the top of the hill. Currently, Jaigarh is within the buffer zone. The distinctive contribution of Amber is the representation of key 17th century Rajput Mughal court-style buildings and gardens. The gardens borrowed Mughal formal planning and superimposed it within the hilly terrain of the hill fort. Next one, please. The primary function of Amber Palace was as a seat of power and the capital of the Dudha region of Rajasthan. The complex, which served residential, official, and religious functions, is an example of a fortified Rajput palace structure, which in layout and architectural style is strongly influenced by Mughal architecture. Next one, please. Amber Palace's ground plan follows the principles of increasing privacy via several courtyards, which is so dominant in Mughal architecture. And you can see here the first court directly entered from the winding ascending path. And its function was that of a forecourt, which served as an open space for large gatherings, parades, and festive events. Next one, please. What is distinctive about Amber are the gardens, as you can see here, constructed alongside the Mauta Lake in 1664. They are along the lines of Mughal gardens, laid out in geometric patterns with water channels. And now some of them laid out in elaborate parterre beds. Next one, please. The final fort is Jaisalmer. Next slide, please. Jaisalmer is the only example included in the nomination of a hill fort in desert terrain. It has a double line of fortifications, the outer one with 99 bastions. The whole complex of fortifications, palaces, temples, and extensive urban dwellings reflects building between the 12th to the 18th centuries. The extensive township contained within the fort from the outset is still inhabited today, and the group of Jain temples make it important and in some respects even unique example of a sacred and secular urban fort. The fort houses around 469 structures, all in yellow sandstone, and all exemplary examples of fine workmanship from the 12th to the 19th centuries. But there are conservation issues to be addressed with this exceptionally large ensemble. Next one, please. This is an example of, there are palaces within the fort dating from the 13th to the 14th centuries, which have been continued to be extended until the 20th century in similar architectural styles. Next slide, please. There are narrow alleys paved in stone leading to domestic houses, and the larger ones, havelis, were embellished with intricately carved cantilevered balconies reflecting the wealth of their owners. 400 households still live in this urban area, and many are said to be descendants of the original settlers. Next one, please. What are particularly distinctive are the group of 8 Jain temples dating from the 14th to the 17th century. Next slide, please. Jaisalmer has had long-standing problems associated with water seepage into the mound on which the fort is built, and because of its size and complexity, particularly of the urban areas, conservation work is a very long-term project. Extensive work has already been undertaken on stabilizing the fort walls and other buildings, and the ICOMOS mission confirmed that the impact of deterioration processes is now being controlled. An elaborate conservation program has been initiated with the help of the World Monument Fund to restrict deterioration of the retaining wall of the fort. Next one, please. ICOMOS supports the criterion 2 and 3. Criterion 4 was also put forward for associational values of the forts, but we did not consider that this could be justified. In terms of, next slide please, boundaries, protection and management we consider are all adequate. There are a few concerns over the conservation of certain aspects of Ranthambore Fort, and we consider that it is essential that the conservation programme for Jaisalmer be undertaken according to the agreed timetable. Next slide, please. And finally, we come to the recommendation, and ICOMOS recommends that the hill forts of Rajasthan, India, be inscribed on the basis of criteria 2 and 3. Next slide, please. We also have some recommendations, which are the following. Extending the boundaries of Amber Fort to include Jaigarh Fort, designating both Amber and Gagron forts as national monuments, and submitting in 2015 a state of conservation report to report on progress with the conservation work at Jaisalmer. Thank you.
I open for discussion, please. Qatar. I give the floor to Qatar.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس. نشكر الأيكوموس على هذا التقرير، كما نشكر الدولة الطرف على جهودها في تقديم ملف متكامل، ولكن هناك نقطتان في مشروع القرار المطروح من الأيكوموس واللتان تحتاجان في نظرنا إلى تغيير، حيث قمنا شخصيا بزيارة لهذا الموقع ورأينا القيمة الاستثنائية العالمية فيه، ويبدو أن أيكوموس تصر على أن يتم إدراج قلعة أمبر ضمن الموقع، ولكن الواقع يقول بأن قلعة أمبر هي ملكية شخصية، ولا يمكن للدولة أن تنتزع هذه الملكية. كما أننا قمنا بزيارة قصر العائلة التي تتبع لها هذه القلعة، وقمنا بطرح السؤال. لم نحظى برؤية الأميرة في قصرها، ولكن قابلنا مدير أعمالها وطرحنا هذا السؤال: ألا يمكن أن تقوموا بالتخلي عن ملكية هذه القلعة؟ فكان الجواب بالنفي. وقد أوضحت الدولة الطرف بأن قوانين الدولة الديمقراطية لا تسمح بأن تنتزع ملكية خاصة وتضمن ضمن الموقع بشكله المتكامل. لذلك فإننا نقترح أن يتم تعديل مشروع القرار. شكرا.
You have a point of order, please.
Извините, пожалуйста, одно уточнение. Речь идет не о Амберфорд, а Джайгар-форт, который является частной собственностью. Спасибо.
I think I turn to Qatar.
لعل روسيا معها حق، ربما كنت غير مركز في الموضوع. شكرا.
I call on Japan to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Japan would like to support and congratulate Hill Fort of Rajasthan for inscription. Japan also would like to commend its effort made after the referral back last year. Thank you.
On Germany, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Germany also congratulates India for this beautiful nomination of such a huge number of fortresses in Rajasthan. I had also the pleasure to see some of them, and I can confirm what the Russian ambassador just has said. Jagar Fort is a private, still owned by the Maharaja of this area, and he doesn't like this part to be inscribed in the World Heritage List. This happens normally. Inscription into the World Heritage List is a privilege, and everybody is looking after. But if you're a Maharaja, maybe you have other views. So maybe this recommendation should be adapted accordingly. Thank you.
All on Colombia, please.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Es un expediente magníficamente elaborado, con la asesoría y el acompañamiento permanente de ICOMOS. Las fotografías y la descripción de estos fuertes prácticamente nos dejan sin aliento. Esto pone en evidencia una vez más la enorme y fascinante riqueza cultural de la India. Por lo tanto, felicitamos a la India, a su distinguida delegación, y respaldamos plenamente la inscripción de este bien en la lista del Patrimonio Mundial. Muchas gracias.
United Arab Emirates.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. الإمارات تهنئ الهند على هذا الموقع الاستثنائي. لقد استمعنا من الإيكومس إلى معلومات ثرية، ومن خلال الصور كانت مناظر معبرة عن ثراء هذا الموقع. نحن نؤيد هذا الإدراج ونهنئ الدولة الطرف على هذه الإضافة الكبيرة لمواقع التراث العالمي. شكرا.
Island, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. My delegation would like to thank the Yokomos for the excellent and elaborate consideration for this majestic and magnificent site. There is no question of the historical and the cultural significance of this hill fort of Rajasthan. The completeness and the majesty of this site cannot be denied. Therefore, I would like to congratulate the State Party for its effort and its work done on the site to meet the criteria of the culture of this World Heritage Center. I therefore have the pleasure to support the nomination of this site as the World Heritage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ethiopia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to echo in congratulating India. As we all remember, last year it was referred with a lot of discussion, and we have to congratulate India in keeping the promises and bringing this marvelous site into inscription. Once again, congratulations, India. Thank you.
La Malaisie, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Chair. This is a magnificent file, and we would like to congratulate India for this important and unusual nomination. Malaysia supports the proposal that the Fort of Jaigarh not be included in the property for the reasons mentioned by Qatar. Congratulations to India.
Call on Iraq, please.
نود أن نهنئ وفد الهند على تسجيل هذا الموقع الفريد من نوعه، وفي نفس الوقت نؤيد الاقتراحات التي مرت قبلنا والدول التي سبقتنا في سحب الفقرة الرابعة A و B. وشكرا.
Russia, you have the floor again.
Уважаемые коллеги из Индии, Российская Федерация поздравляет вас и всех нас с включением такого сокровища в список всемирного наследия, которое значительно обогатит наш список. И со своей стороны хочу поддержать поправку, предложенную Катаром. Спасибо.
France, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La France félicite l'Inde pour la qualité du dossier, mais par-delà la qualité du dossier, c'est surtout des cadeaux qu'elle nous fait aujourd'hui en nous proposant ces richesses. Donc, nous soutenons cette proposition d'inscription. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Si je donne la parole à Algérie.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. L'Algérie soutient l'inscription de ce site en l'état. sur la liste du patrimoine, l'inscription de ce site sur la liste du patrimoine mondial et félicite de prime abord l'Inde pour ce beau cadeau, comme vient de dire le délégué, Madame la déléguée de la France. Et je souhaiterais aussi rendre hommage au travail qui a été fait en collaboration entre l'État partie et l'ICOMOS. C'est la production d'un rapport qui mérite de la considération. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
On South Africa, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to congratulate India and the advisory body ICUN for having worked together well in working on this site of this magnitude, which also explains the amount of work that must have gone into ensuring that this site gets the reviews it's getting today. I support the inscription of the site with the amendments that have been recommended by Qatar. Thank you.
Delegation of Cambodia, you have the floor.
I thank you, Chair. Cambodia would like to join previous speakers in supporting the inscription. We would like to congratulate ICOMOS for the quality of their work, its work, and also the positive recommendation for the property, as well as India for contributing to the enrichment of the World Heritage List in the World Heritage List with their impressive and exceptional site. I thank you.
La Mali, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous saisissons une fois de plus cette opportunité, Monsieur le Président, pour féliciter l'État partie de l'Inde pour la qualité du dossier et nous félicitons également l'ICOMOS pour l'évaluation faite au sujet de ce dossier. Merci.
Call on Siabi, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have listened carefully to ICOMOS presentation, and we are thankful for comprehensive information regarding that exceptional site. We join the previous speaker in support of listing this magnificent treasure on the World Heritage List. Once again, congratulations to India. Thank you.
Suisse, je vous donne la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La Suisse aussi soutient l'inscription de ces biens tout à fait impressionnants dans la liste du patrimoine mondial. Nous voudrions féliciter l'Inde pour la qualité du dossier qu'elle a soumis, mais également nous voudrions nous féliciter de l'aboutissement d'un processus qui a été demandé par le comité dans ses sessions passées et qui a abouti à une coopération particulière avec l'ICOMOS que nous saluons.
I call on ICOMOS, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say one thing in order to correct the record, as it were, because I don't want to give the impression that ICOMOS was suggesting that we should take the owners away from the Jaigar fort. Our recommendation was to suggest that the State Party give consideration to extending the boundaries, but it wasn't stronger than that. At some point in the future, if and when the owner might be amenable to such a suggestion. So I would like to just make that point clear. But secondly, to say that we also welcome the collaboration with the State Party in developing this nomination. Thank you.
Rapporteur, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais vous présenter les changements qu'on a reçus de la part de Qatar pour la décision 37 comme 8B 31 on a sur l'écran dans les deux langues. Donc, paragraphe 1, on a rajouté la référence au document de lettres d'erreur factuelle. Et je voudrais par informer les autres délégations qu'on va ajouter dans d'autres décisions aussi cette référence pour que les délégations le sachent. Paragraphe 2, on n'a pas eu de changement proposé. Paragraphe 3, sous brève synthèse, on n'a pas de changement. Je prie le secrétariat d'aller en bas sous l'intégrité. Merci. Donc, dans le deuxième paragraphe, sous l'intégrité, donc je lis la fin qui a été proposée être biffée. Pour l'effort, vous avez sur l'écran. Pour l'effort d'Ambert et de Kumalgar, l'évolution et les fondations stratégiques de l'architecture militaire Rajput ne peuvent être comprises hors du contexte complet de leur structure de défense militaire. Pour le fort d'Ambert, ce texte comprend les fortifications extérieures avec le fort de Jaigar et pour le fort de Kumbhakar, le porte extérieur à la pôle devrait être incluse. Donc ça a été proposé de supprimer. Vous pouvez aller plus en bas, merci. Sous l'authenticité, il n'y a pas de changement. On va passer à éléments requis en matière de protection et de gestion. Je vous prie d'aller paragraphe qui commence avec l'effort de Gagron et à la fin, vous vous arrêtez là, merci. À la fin, la dernière phrase a été proposée pour la suppression. Il serait souhaitable d'obtenir un classement national pour l'effort de Gagron et d'Ambert. Ensuite, le paragraphe suivant, la fin du paragraphe suivant, et concernant l'environnement plus large d'efforts afin de réglementer le développement. Ensuite, on n'a pas de changement jusqu'au paragraphe numéro 4 qui est proposé par Qatar d'être supprimé, recommande que l'État partie prenne en considération les points suivants. Éteindre les limites du fort d'Ambert afin d'y inclure le fort de Jaigar et inclure la porte à la pôle au fort de Kumbhalar. Petit b, classer les forts d'Ambert et de Gagron comme monuments nationaux. Et le paragraphe 5, nouveau 4, donc il n'y a pas de changement. Merci.
Le texte est déjà présenté. I see no more comment. I now declare the decision 37.8b.31 as amended adopted. Let me congratulate India on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. India, you have the floor for a brief 2-minute statement. Please.
Mr. Chairperson, members of the World Heritage Committee, member states, distinguished delegates and experts. On behalf of the Indian delegation, I thank the government of Cambodia for hosting the World Heritage Committee meeting. India is a country with rich and diverse cultural and natural heritage. Today, it welcomes the inscription of its 30th site, the hill forts of Rajasthan, on the World Heritage List. The hill forts of Rajasthan include 6 magnificent forts of Jaisalmer, Chittorgarh, Kumbhalgarh, Ranthambore, Amer, and Gagaron from the state of Rajasthan. These are an exceptional testimony not only to the military architecture, but of their exploitation of the rugged terrain, as well as intangible values they embody. In particular, stories of Rajput valor and myriad cultural practices that have continued for centuries. This is a proud moment for the state of Rajasthan, as well as for the entire nation that celebrates this moment. We are committed to protect and preserve these forts and their outstanding universal value for posterity. I thank the World Heritage Committee, ICOMOS, World Heritage Center, and all others who have supported and played a significant role in this inscription. I also take this opportunity to invite you to India to visit these great forts and to other exceptional places, monuments, and sites that are a testimony to our living past. Thank you very much once again, Mr. Chairperson.
Thanks to the distinguished delegate from India. Now we came to another item. The site is a wooden circus of the Carpathian region in Poland and Ukraine. Draft decision number 37, 8B.37. I now invite ICOMOS to present the transnational nomination of the wooden circus of the Carpathian region in Poland and Ukraine. ICOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. This is a serial nomination of wooden cerkwas in the Carpathian region of Poland and Ukraine. The cerkwas are churches of horizontal log construction built by communities of the Eastern Orthodox and Greek Catholic faith in the 16th to 19th centuries. For specific types are identified with particular communities in isolated mountain settings and are represented by 16 selected examples in this serial nomination. These 16 components are located along the border of Poland and Ukraine in the Carpathian Mountains, with 8 nominated cerkwas in Poland and another 8 located in Ukraine. The total nominated property area is close to 7 hectares. Polich is the first cerkwa example in Ukraine and is an example of the earliest group, the so-called Galich type, characterized by a longitudinal plan of narthex, nave, and sanctuary, well visible also in this example in red rouge, of which you see here the details of the tower and the iconostasis. The Galich type also shows pyramid-shaped shingled roofs as here in Rogatin, Ukraine, and the latter form of Galich type, as here in Chotydnich, Poland, integrates octagonal drums and domes over the narthex, nave, and sanctuary. And the church shows impressive examples of heavy wooden logs and interior paintings. Galich types even have lanterns, as illustrated here for the component at Shouka. Or here in Drogobic, which is distinguished by the two polygonal choir bays on either side of the nave, and the 17th century richly decorated iconostasis shown here. The second type is called boiko. These cerquas follow the traditional longitudinal tripartite form, but are distinguished by multi-tiered shingled roofs, as here in Smolnik, Poland, and in Uzhok, Ukraine, where the shingled roofs are capped with small tiers, and which has a distinctive horizontal log structure. Or in Matkiv, Ukraine, with 3 high octagonal multi-tiered towers which almost resemble Asian pagodas, and which is further characterized by its elaborate interior decoration and iconostasis. Nizhny Verbich, Ukraine, is the first example of the Gutsul type, distinguished by their cruciform plan created by adding wings to either side. Built in the same type is Yazinya in Ukraine, with further emphasis on the squared nave, covered by an octagonal tented dome surmounted by another miniature dome, which also has a separate bell tower seen here. The fourth and last type of cerquas is the Lemko type, which incorporates high bell towers above the narthex, as here in Powrożnik, Poland, which has likewise preserved the 17th century iconostasis and polychrome wall paintings. Another Lemko type example is seen here in Brunare-Weźne, Poland, where the bell tower is crowned by an onion dome, bulb and finial clads in metal, and which also retains its historic iconostasis. Also the church in Kriaton, Poland, shown here, and at Owsiary, Poland, are examples of this type. And here you see some additional views of Lemko type interiors. And the last missing example in Tużansk, Poland, is the oldest example of this East Lemko style. The 3-tiered bell tower of which is also shown here. ICOMOS considers that the exterior approach and criteria 3 and 4 are justified, and that the conditions of integrity and authenticity have been met. The boundaries proposed and legal protection are adequate, yet the formal integration of a few already approved buffer zones in regional planning schemes needs to be finalized. While conservation seems adequate, inventories for 3 out of the 16 properties remain to be completed, and the overarching management, in theory adequate, is awaiting the official approval of the steering committee, which ICOMOS understands is supposed to take place in June 2013, so right now. ICOMOS recommends to inscribe the property on the World Heritage List under criteria 3 and 4. ICOMOS further recommends that the state party continues to finalize the process of integrating all buffer zone designations within the respective land use plans and to officially establish the steering committee by the time frame indicated. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
I open the floor for discussion, please. Committee member first. Estonia first.
Thank you, Chair. Estonia would like to congratulate Poland and the Ukraine for preparing in cooperation this exemplary nomination. Although there are plenty of churches on the World Heritage List already, these cerquas form an exceptional group and therefore should be inscribed on the World Heritage List. Thank you.
Je donne la parole à la France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La France se réjouit de cette proposition conjointe et félicite les 2 États et encourage donc cette proposition d'inscription. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Call on Germany, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to congratulate Poland and Ukraine for this transboundary inscription or nomination of a beautiful site which shows the historic connection between the two countries. Thank you.
More comment, please. I call on Malaysia.
Thank you, Chair. The success of a transnational property is seen in this nomination of charming buildings that are outstanding and unique. Malaysia would like to congratulate Poland and Ukraine for this special nomination. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I call je donne la parole à Algérie.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. L'Algérie félicite les deux pays, la Pologne et l'Ukraine, pour leur proposition conjointe et appuie l'option d'inscription de ce bien dans la liste du patrimoine mondial. Merci.
Call on Serbia, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like join previous delegation and congratulate both countries for submission. Thank you very much.
I give the floor to Russia, please.
Спасибо, господин президент. Мы хотели бы искренне и глубоко поздравить Украину и Польшу с внесением уникальных совершенно церквей, которые построены полностью из дерева и которые как бы являются в архитектуре очень близкой к самой окружающей среде, горы и лес. Поэтому мы поздравляем их и считаем, что это большая победа комитета нашего, консультативных органов. Спасибо.
Call on Qatar, please.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. نحن بدورنا نهنئ الدولتين بولندا وأوكرانيا وندعم ترشيح وندعم المقترح القاضي بتسجيل الموقع. شكرا.
No more comment. I now declare the decision 37.8b.34 adopted. Let me congratulate Poland and Ukraine on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. A representative of the two countries, you have the floor for a brief 2-minute statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we are always together, sorry. So, first of all, I would like to thank to the government of Cambodia for its hospitality, but as well I think that sharing the same feelings of satisfaction with my Ukrainian colleagues, I would like to as well, in our hearts, on behalf of delegation of Poland, express my certain special gratitude to the members of the World Heritage Committee for the decision to inscribe the wooden cerkwias on the World Heritage List. The cerkwias are the most authentic examples of once widespread timber building tradition that originated in the 15th century and have survived to these days. Local communities of Boyko, Łemko, Hucul origin, their history and customs, as well as their building tradition, offer universal proof of how these multi-ethnic and multicultural societies adapted to their environment for the centuries. It's especially gratifying that the heritage of the communities that created the Cerkvias is being recognized as of universal value, being fundamental expression of the cultural diversity of the Carpathian region of the Central Eastern part of Europe, complementing already existing on the World Heritage List wooden churches of Małopolska. We would like to thank to the Ukrainian State Party for their cooperation pertaining to the research and protection of our common heritage. We are especially pleased with our ongoing transboundary partnership and would like to affirm the World Heritage community that we will continue this fruitful cooperation in order to ensure the highest possible protection and management of this treasure for our culture. Poland endured difficult past in the last century, and that affected our fragile culture. So we are lucky that this particular evidences has survived, and we are privileged to look after it and pass it to the future generations. Having these experiences in the field of heritage protection, we dare to present our candidature to the World Heritage Committee so we could be helpful to the World Heritage. Thank you very much for your attention, and sorry for being too long.
I call on Ukraine to make statement. Ukraine, please.
Уважаемый председатель, уважаемые господа и дамы и господа, мы хотим поблагодарить тоже Комитет всемирного наследия за внесение нашего общего с польской стороной номинации в состав списка всемирного наследия ЮНЕСКО. Как уже сказал мой польский коллега, это была очень трудная в некоторых местах работа, но нам удалось создать общую картину строительства деревянной архитектуры Карпатского региона Гуцулу, Лемков, Бойков и Галичан. И вместе с тем представить в список всемирного наследия тот элемент, которого не хватало в уже имеющихся в поданных к номинации, уже принятых в список наследия сакральной архитектуры деревянной архитектуры европейских стран. Еще раз хотим выразить большую благодарность государству Камбоджи за организацию этой сессии, за польской стороне за участие в работе и комитету за положительное отношение к решению по нашему вопросу. Спасибо.
His delegate from Poland and from Ukraine. Now, dear colleague, as you know, a drafting group has been set up to help in the drafting of decision 7B 100 concerning the state of conservation of the archaeological site and the historic center of Panada Vejo. I have just been informed that the drafting group has completed its work. A draft decision will be presented to you now by the chairperson of the drafting group. Please note that it is proposed to adopt this decision by consensus. You have the floor, the distinguished delegate from Cambodia, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, chers membres du comité, j'ai le plaisir de vous annoncer qu'au terme de 3 sessions de travail, le groupe de rédaction sur la décision 37.7b.100 a réussi à élaborer un texte de consensus qui vous est soumis pour approbation sans discussion. Je tiens à remercier les membres du groupe de rédaction pour leur participation active qui a permis d'obtenir les résultats qui vous sont présentés aujourd'hui. Je tiens également à saluer l'excellent esprit de coopération et d'ouverture qui a régné tout au long du groupe de travail. Je vous remercie de votre attention. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Rapporteur Youssef de texte.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. On va regarder la décision telle que préparée par le groupe de travail qui est sous nos écrans. Sous nos yeux, je vais vous le dire. Je vais vous introduire la décision. Donc, c'est le premier paragraphe. Regardez bien. Paragraphe 2. Lentement, s'il vous plaît. Paragraphe 3. Paragraphe 4. Laissez le paragraphe 4 un petit peu, il est plus long. Paragraphe 5. Paragraphe 6. Paragraphe 7. Et paragraphe 8. Donc, c'est le résultat d'un travail acharné de la délégation et des membres du comité. Voilà, Monsieur le Président, vous pouvez procéder à l'adoption du paragraphe de la décision 37com 7B 100, telle qu'amendée par le groupe de travail et proposée au comité. Merci.
J'invite les membres du comité à adopter cette décision 37com 7B 100. Donc la décision est adoptée. Panama to take the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank for the working group of the excellent job that they have done, for the friends that were working there, Miss from Algeria, from le représentant de Mali, the Swiss, our colleague from Mexico, representing the region, ICOMOS, Monsieur César et Carolina. I would like also to say that there's a lesson here to learn. I think that it's very important that the State Party, as well as ICOMOS and all the advisory bodies, have constant communications along the year, as we were spoken during the meeting in November 3rd, in such a way that issues can be solved well in advance in order to come to an end, and the decisions are easier to come. We very much appreciate, and the State Party will certainly abide and comply. And I thank you, Chair, for your time and for the dedication that were done here. And there were other persons, especially to Mr. Oberoi, Ambassador Oberoi, and Madame Mitrofanova,
la déléguée de la France aussi, and our dear friend, Mr. Delegate from Brazil, that is always around us, helping on those issues and giving us the best advices. Thank you very much, Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of Panama for his very positive speech. Now we came to the item B, mixed property, B1 Africa, B.1.1 new nomination. Bijagos Archipelago, Moton Morongfa Drogo, Guinea-Bissau. Draft decision 37 come with 8B.17. I now invite both IUCN and ECOMOS to present the nomination of the Bijagos Archipelago, Motom Moronga Zongo, Guinea-Bissau. IUCN and ECOMOS, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. ICOMOS will start the presentation. There's a map showing the location of the property off the Atlantic coast of West Africa, off the coast of Guinea-Bissau. Next slide, please. The Bijagos archipelago consists of a vast network of 88 small islands and tidal mudflats formed in the ancient delta of the Rio Geba and the Rio Grande rivers and protected by shoals, reefs and surf. The islands are inhabited by the Bijagos group of people, now mainly farmers and fishermen. Until the late 19th century, the economy of the islands was built on trade. 21 islands are now used for habitation and cultivation, and 20 others for cultivation only. The rest of the islands are considered sacred, protected by spirits, and used for initiation rites and religious ceremonies. Next. The Bijagos villages, clusters of squared thatched buildings, lie in the interior of the islands. Their economy is based on the cultivation of rice and oil palms. The ubiquity of the rich natural resources of the island has traditionally been protected through customs and practices, reinforced by taboos and reflected in sculptures and ritual dances. The entire nominated area is a biosphere reserve. In terms of categories of cultural property, this is a site. It is also nominated as a cultural landscape. Next slide. The larger blue boundary on this map shows the boundary of the nominated area, which coincides with the biosphere reserve. Next slide, please. Approximately 30,000 people live in the scattered islands of the archipelago. They are known collectively as the Bijagos, a group of people of different ethnic and linguistic groups whose origins have not all been studied in detail. Of those that have, they are thought to have migrated from what is now Mali, probably in the 13th century, and were pushed towards the coastal zone they occupy today, including these islands. One of the difficulties in assessing this nomination is that the dossier provides very little detailed analytical information on cultural aspects in comparison to what has been provided for the natural aspects of the property. Although cultural and sacred practices are mentioned, this is only done so in the most general of terms. The mission report provided some supplementary information, and much of that has been used in the ICOMOS evaluation and in this presentation. There are some 177 villages within the property, and as well as houses, each village includes shrines, ceremonial public spaces, storage for shells, and small areas for growing vegetables. The buildings that make up the houses are rectangular in form and built in adobe or cob and covered with overhanging straw roofs. And the buildings used for storage, as you can see here, are raised up on wooden poles. Next slide, please. Farming is carried out on the settled islands and also 20 other islands. Areas of moist ground are used for cultivating lowland rice during the rainy season. Oil palms are selectively protected and then harvested for a wide range of products, such as oil and fronds for building and roots for medicine. They also shelter areas of lowland rice. Next, hill rice is also grown on a rotational basis, and after 6 to 10 years, the plots are cleaned and burnt and left vacant for a few years. Cattle are also kept, but it's not quite clear where their grazing grounds are. Fish is harvested as well, and white mangroves provide important components of the local diet. 20 of the islands are used only for cultivation, with some sort of temporary settlements, such as you see here. Next slide, please. In common with many other peoples in the forest areas of West Africa, the Bijagos hold nature that is unrelated to economic and subsistent activities as sacred, and respect areas where spirits reside, such as mangroves, beaches, and small islands. And family clans who have close ties with certain deities monitor the shrines and establish rituals and other behavior within the sites. And certain islands are designated for ceremonies related to rites of passage, with access restricted to those who have already completed their ceremonial duties. Next slide, please. And this is a building on one such island, an initiation building for women. Next slide, please. Since independence in 1974, the sea has proved attractive to fishermen from other parts of West Africa who've migrated to this area, settled on some islands, and set up commercial operations, such as supplying shark fins and smoking sardines. In spite of prohibition, these illegal operations continue. Fishing tourism has led to some coastal development, and this and other development is regulated and agreed by the communities. However, there are flaws in the systems, as a tour operator, for instance, settled on a sacred island without permission. Next slide, please. It's important to note that it is comparatively recently that the Bijagos people have become primarily farmers. After their migration from Mali, they took advantage of the strategic location of the islands and used flotillas of large armed canoes to capture slaves on the mainland that they then resold. The peace process was eventually instituted, and the canoes were destroyed and movements between the islands restricted. And this led to changes in the economy, with the traders becoming farmers and fishermen. And it also led to changes in the ecology of the islands. As to increase farming, forests were cut and the land was transformed into palm plantations. In the early 20th century, there was a processing plant for palm oil, which was also gave certain prosperity to the islands. Next one, please. The Bijagos cannot be seen as farmers who've lived in harmony with nature for centuries. They are today living in this way because there are few other opportunities currently for trade. Next slide, please. One of the main threats to the rural economy is the lack of resources to patrol the area. There are many adverse impacts on the archipelago, or potential impacts, because of ships going in and out of ports. And there is a proposal to set up, for instance, a ship-breaking area in one of the islands which could increase that trade. The government of Guinea-Bissau simply does not have the resources to enforce regulation. Most recently, drug cartels have begun to use the isolated archipelago, and at the moment it is difficult to control their activities. Important decisions are still being made through the traditional chiefs, but this system needs to be robust enough to cope with the illegal processes that are impacting on it, and currently that additional protection is not in force. The management plan was developed for the Biosphere Reserve, and although it respects cultural zones, it's not directed at supporting the cultural traditions of the island. Next slide. With the very slight information contained in the nomination dossier, it is very difficult to make an evaluation of the landscape. ICOMOS notes that many of the cultural practices have strong similarities with many other areas of West Africa, in terms of their social and economic systems. Although there is a section on comparative analysis in the nomination dossier on natural aspects, nothing is provided in terms of comparison for the cultural aspects. Next slide, please. Because of its remoteness and comparative inaccessibility, the way of life of its communities is one that is fostered by need, followed by the collapse of the previous trading opportunities. ICOMOS considers that the exceptionality of the interaction between the Bajogos and their landscape has not been demonstrated. It nevertheless considers that stronger management needs to be put in place for the cultural attributes in order to allow for sustainable development that might improve the opportunities of the villagers and still respect their strong traditional associations with nature. Next slide, please. We think that the conditions of integrity and authenticity have been met, although they're highly vulnerable. But with the present information, we cannot undertake a satisfactory comparative analysis or justify the criteria that were put forward. The boundaries and conservation are adequate, but at the moment, the protection and management certainly is not sufficient to deflect the considerable threats that are impacting on this property. Next slide, please. In conclusion, ICOMOS recommends that this nomination be deferred on the basis of cultural criteria in order that the state party can deepen the comparative analysis so as to ascertain whether the property might be considered to have the potential to demonstrate outstanding universal value for cultural criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. IUCN will continue, and our evaluation is on page 113 of the English, 115 of the French versions of the IUCN report. I'll just let the slides come up on the screen. Thank you. So if we proceed, in fact, we can proceed through two slides, as ICOMOS has already shown you the map of the property. So please pass to the next slide. And the next one. And as ICOMOS has also noted, the entire nominated area was inscribed as a biosphere reserve in 1996. No buffer zone is designated to the property, and it's mostly surrounded by reefs, sandbanks and shoals on the marine side, and a belt of mangroves grows along the continental coast. Next slide, please. The property has been nominated under natural criteria 7, 9 and 10. In relation to criterion 7, the property does have some almost pristine belts of sandy beaches, mangroves and palms surrounding the islands. However, the most significant natural values of this property are the marine areas, including a large range of areas that support important marine species. Whilst the property includes extensive natural areas of great beauty, some areas, notably at the interior of all of the larger islands, have lost the majority of their natural values through cultivation and human habitation, although some of the smaller islets, as well as some of the marine areas, remain in a near pristine condition. We believe there is potential of the property to meet criterion 7. Next slide, please. The Bajogos Archipelago is the only active deltaic island archipelago along the Atlantic coast of Africa. It includes tidal flats that are extremely rich in nutrients, thereby maintaining an important flora and marine fauna. This flora and rich invertebrate fauna also sustain an important variety of fish, including sharks and rays, marine turtles, dolphins, manatees, migratory waders and other seabirds, and the presence of a large diversity of higher-order predators, such as sharks and 2 species of dolphin, testifies to the good health of the marine ecosystem. Ecological processes in the terrestrial part of the property, however, do not match the expectations of criterion 9. IUCN considers that the nominated property with further work could have the potential to meet criterion 9. Next slide, please. The nominated property is of great regional significance as the second most important wintering site for Palearctic migratory waders after the Banc d'Arguin in Mauritania, and one of the most important nesting areas for green turtle globally. The property also provides protection for an important range of threatened species, including 5 species of marine turtles, at least 10 sharks, 6 rays, possibly 2 species of sawfish, the West African manatee, the Atlantic humpback dolphin, and an unusual population of hippopotamus that have adopted a marine way of life. Its terrestrial values, however, do not rank in the same way in relation to biodiversity criteria. Again, IUCN considers that with revisions, this nominated property does have the potential to meet natural criterion 10. Next slide, please. The Biosphere Reserve that is the subject of the nomination is currently not fully underpinned by legal protection. There are proposals to legally protect the area, but this requires a consistent and committed level of national attention. There are 3 legally protected areas that cover only parts of the nominated property. Next slide, please. The boundaries of the nominated property are the same as those for the Biosphere Reserve. The property seems to illustrate many commendable aspects of how a Biosphere Reserve should be managed. However, including the whole of the Biosphere Reserve brings many areas that would be quite problematic in relation to the application of the natural criteria, although could be appropriate in relation to providing a buffering function in that regard. There have been important efforts on the governance of this property. The Institute for Biodiversity and Protected Areas, EBAP, is an autonomous government body created in 2007 and is the management authority for this area. A management plan for the Biosphere Reserve was prepared in 1996. This is rather more of an operational plan than something which really specifies management goals in the longer term, and it currently requires updating. And it does not quite currently provide an adequate base for the effective management of this site. For this variety of reasons, IUCN considers that the property does not currently meet integrity or protection and management requirements as expected. Next and final slide, please. So, in summary, IUCN considers IUCN would recommend that the committee defer the examination of the nomination of this property to the World Heritage List to allow the whole range of issues that have been identified, and I think complemented by those identified by ICOMOS, to be considered through a revised nomination. IUCN has indicated its willingness to support the state party in this effort. We have a long history of working with Guinea-Bissau. And we consider this is clearly a project where additional international support should be brought together in line with the concept of the upstream process. So we very much end up in the same space as ICOMOS in terms of making our recommendations. And we very much hope that work towards a successful nomination will continue from this point. Chair, for the draft decision in this instance is set out in page 17 of the English and page 18 of the French versions of Working Document 8B. Thank you.
I open the floor for comment. Sénégal, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous avons écouté avec beaucoup d'attention les commentaires de l'ICOMOS et de l'UICN. Les îles Bijagos sont nos voisins du Sénégal. C'est un écosystème presque complémentaire à ce que nous avons dans le delta du Saloum. Et il y a certains migrateurs qui fréquentent les deux espaces. C'est donc quelque chose à laquelle nous tenons très fortement. Après avoir écouté l'ICOMOS et l'UICN, nous avons la forte conviction que ce bien remplit au moins les critères liés à la valeur universelle exceptionnelle. À la page 22 du rapport de l'UICN, de l'ICOMOS, excusez-moi, les 3 premiers paragraphes sont tout à fait instructifs. Ils montrent l'association entre les Bijagos et le paysage. Ils montrent que certains paysages sont vierges et intacts et que leur conservation est tout à fait exceptionnelle. J'y ajouterai, juste pour la galerie, mais c'est important, les Bijagos sont l'une des rares sociétés matriarcales encore en Afrique. Je me demande si ce n'est pas une valeur aussi universelle, exceptionnelle. Pour en venir aux valeurs naturelles, je constate que sur tous les 3 points soulevés, le potentiel est estimé existant. Je pense que, en réalité, quand on fait l'analyse du dossier, il est un peu victime de la situation du pays. Il y a un problème de gouvernance du dossier, il y a un problème de pilotage, il y a un problème d'administration. Ça, c'est des problèmes vrais sur lesquels on ne peut pas opposer aux évaluateurs des arguments effectifs. Cependant, j'aurais souhaité que le comité traite ce dossier avec une extrême diligence, parce qu'il y a des risques imminents qui, s'ils ne sont pas jugulés, risquent de compromettre définitivement la valeur universelle exceptionnelle de ce bien qui, pour moi, existe. La première chose à faire, à mon avis, c'est d'aider le pays à mieux maîtriser les limites du bien. La deuxième chose, c'est d'essayer de travailler de telle sorte que la législation existante puisse être appliquée et renforcée avec une véritable équipe de gestion. Mais je voudrais attirer aussi l'attention de notre communauté sur le fait extrêmement grave que si nous ne faisons rien pour aider à la maîtrise, au contrôle, à la mise en valeur et à l'administration des ailes Bijagos, elles vont devenir très rapidement un paradis pour les narcotrafiquants. C'est pourquoi vraiment nous invitons le comité à mettre à la disposition des organisations consultatives et le Fonds africain aussi du patrimoine mondial à mobiliser toute la communauté pour que tous ensemble nous travaillions à faire de telle sorte que les valeurs identifiées soient renforcées, qu'une législation adéquate soit mise en place et que les villes Bijagos restent un paradis pour les humains et non une jungle pour les narcotrafiquants. Je vous remercie.
Merci.
Naturellement, on n'a pas le choix. On est obligé de suivre les organisations consultatives.
I now declare the decision 37.8b.17 adopted. Now it is 6:30 p.m. already, and we have a lot of side event. I'd like to adjourn our afternoon session, and we will meet tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Thank you very much. Information, announcement. Please wait for the announcement from the Secretariat, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The Namibian delegation would like to announce that the venue for the reception tonight has changed. It is no longer in the Champai room as it was in the invitation. It will be held in room Romdul on the first floor. This is where we had our opening ceremony, and congratulations again. Thank you very much.
Maybe you can just
Also for the Swiss event. Thank you.